Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm RC Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Wherever you're joining us, thank you for joining us. It's 17 degrees in downtown Winnipeg right now, and our high today is going to be right around 21, and it should be mainly sunny for us, so we'll keep an eye on that forecast after some clearing this morning. Pardon me, today's high 22 degrees. If you need us on the commute, give us a call at 788-3093. So far, so good, so early. Let's say good morning to the team. Abby Adeyemi, good morning to you. Abby's behind the controls and we'll be covering weather on air. Kevin Ipatebo, good morning. You can see Kevin waving at you on YouTube. Kev's our YouTube producer. And good morning to Corey Funk, who's our studio director and show director and will be on air with us talking about the commute should something develop today. All right, let's find out what's developing in news. Megan Ketchison is in for Heather Wells and has your headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's new energy policy acknowledges that oil and gas won't be phased out as energy sources anytime soon. The province is slated to release a policy today that states fossil fuels will remain in use until cleaner sources of energy are more plentiful. The Canute government has promised to make Manitoba carbon neutral by 2050. And a Winnipeg artist says online sellers are using her designs without her permission for Orange Shirt Day t-shirts. Jackie Travers says she's noticed this happening, especially in the lead up to the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. Travers says she recently noticed 2 sellers on Facebook putting her designs on orange t-shirts. And we'll have more at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
We're going to have Jackie Travers on the show today as well. And that is because the problem that Megan's been outlining in the news is not new. This has been going on now for a number of years. So it is the latest in terms of what's happening to Travers. But there's other artists that have been facing this. So we're going to get into the challenge and also how to get ahead of it if you're looking to buy a shirt, where you might want to consider and how to verify what you're buying. In addition, on the program today, we have quite an interview late in the show after 8 o'clock. A guest who will be with us live. In the days following 9/11, he was shot in the face by a white supremacist in a brutal hate crime. On our show today, an interview with Rice Boan, who is in our city to screen a documentary he co-produced called Pain and Peace. And despite what he's lived through, this man remains hopeful for the future of the world. So stay tuned for that. Right now, though, World Report.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Needless to say, when you go through a breakup, you get perspective. Just ask Omar Apollo. He'll be here to tell you about making what some are calling the greatest breakup album of the year. It's called God Said No, and what he had to go through in order to make it.
So don't just dispose of me.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Britain is having its Me Too moment.
This case combines some of the most horrific elements of the cases involving Jimmy Savile, Jeffrey Epstein, and Harvey Weinstein.
One of the lawyers representing a group of women, including 3 Canadians who accused Mohammed Al-Fayed of sexual assault and rape. Al-Fayed was the father of Princess Diana's partner Dodi, and he owned the British luxury department store Harrods, which is now being sued in a civil case. Maria Mulla, one of the lawyers representing the women who have come forward.
One woman was sexually assaulted, and she had the bravery and courage to raise this. On the same day of making this written complaint, the head of security contacted her and said, "You are a girl, alone, in London. Someone could jump out the bushes at you, or you could have a sudden accident."
The senior Al-Fayed died in August of 2023. Many of his accusers say they did not feel comfortable coming forward until he had died. The United Nations Security Council is meeting today to address the growing fear of war between Israel and Hezbollah. Israeli fighter jets have been pounding Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. Abby Kugadasan reports.
In some of the most intense bombings since October 7th, the Israeli military says it has hit more than 100 Hezbollah targets, including rocket launchers inside Lebanon. Anshel Pfeffer is an Israeli journalist.
What happened overnight seems to be a couple of clicks on the dial towards an all-out war.
These strikes followed twin attacks across Lebanon earlier this week, targeting pagers and walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah members. Dozens of people were killed and thousands were injured, including civilians. Across Lebanon, deep concern about what could come next. Sally Abu Al-Jud is a journalist there.
They're scared. People were scared also to use their devices after what happened.
Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah has vowed retaliation against Israel, but did not provide further details. Israel has not commented on the explosions, but it is widely believed it is behind the complex operation. In a clear sign that some of the IDF's focus is shifting, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant spoke of a new phase in the war. A new goal, too, to ensure that more than 60,000 Israelis can return home near the northern border with Lebanon. Some IDF troops are now being diverted there.
What we're hearing is that the plan is for a very limited incursion.
Travers says that hasn't been confirmed, but a recent poll shows this is what 52% of Jewish Israelis want, a broad-scale war in Lebanon. Western leaders in Washington and London are urging restraint, and the UN Security Council is holding an emergency session today. Abby Kuadas in CBC News, Berlin.
Donald Trump says Israel's security depends on him.
If we don't win this election, Israel, in my opinion, within a period of 2 to 3 years will cease to exist. It's going to be wiped out. That's what's going to happen.
The U.S. Republican presidential hopeful made his comments at an event sponsored by the Israel-American Council. The CBC's Caroline Bargut is following the story from our Washington bureau. Caroline, what more did Trump have to say?
Donald Trump says that Jewish Americans would be to blame if he lost this upcoming election. Now, he made these comments last night. He was here in Washington speaking at the Israeli-American Council's National Summit. Now, he told the crowd, if Kamala Harris wins, Israel will cease to exist. Take a listen.
I'm the one that's protecting you. These are the people that are going to destroy you, and you have 60% of the Jewish people essentially voting for them. If I do win, Israel will be safe and secure.
Now, Trump also said that he has been the best president by far for Israel. And during his time in office, he did move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He recognized Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights. He was also speaking about the Biden-Harris administration's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. He criticized their handling of that and also of the protests on college campuses. And he repeated that if any Jew votes for Harris, they should have their heads examined.
On another issue, the Republican candidate for governor of North Carolina is facing pressure to quit the race. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. CNN is reporting that one of Trump's allies, Mark Robinson, who is the Republican candidate running for governor in North Carolina, he had posted a number of offensive comments on a message board of a pornographic site, referring to himself as a black Nazi. He is said to have made these comments between 2008 and 2012. Now, he allegedly defended slavery, saying that it wasn't bad and that he wished they would bring it back. The report also says in 2012, he said he preferred Hitler to then President Barack Obama. Now, Robinson posted a statement, and he also did a little video before CNN posted their story, and he denied making any of these comments, and he says he is not dropping out of the race.
Caroline Bargut in our Washington bureau. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.
The European Commission president says she is in Kyiv to discuss Europe's support for Ukraine. Ursula von der Leyen posted on social media Friday morning. It's her 8th visit to Ukraine's capital. Von der Leyen will also talk about Ukraine's ongoing defense and winter preparations. In Hungary, a swollen Danube River flows through the capital. Budapest residents have been racing to build flood defenses. The rapidly rising river is expected to peak either today or Saturday, and it could reach record levels. Other Central European countries like Romania and Poland have seen the worst floods in decades in recent days. The floods have caused billions of dollars in damage. The CBC has obtained court documents laying out graphic details of alleged racism and sexism by a group of RCMP officers in BC. 3 members of the Coquitlam detachment are facing dismissal for their participation in a private chat group through the encrypted Signal messaging app. A search warrant obtained by the Force's Professional Standards Unit lays out the allegations against them, and Jason Proctor reports.
In one private chat group conversation, a Mountie allegedly joked about tasering unarmed black people. In another, a different officer allegedly called a sexual assault victim dumb, adding a vile misogynistic slur. According to a search warrant obtained by CBC, a member of the Coquitlam RCMP who belonged to the group stepped forward to complain about what he called atrocious, racist and horrible behaviour by his colleagues. Constable Sam Sodi complained they belittled Indigenous people, evoking racist stereotypes. And he also said one of the 3 officers now facing dismissal mocked a domestic assault victim. The 3 Mounties have been suspended since June 2021. A code of conduct hearing for the men was supposed to begin in Surrey on Monday, but has now been adjourned until next March, more than 4 years after Sodi first stepped forward. According to the warrant, the complaint also led to a review of thousands of messages the officers sent through the RCMP's own chat logs, finding evidence they engaged in frequently offensive usage of homophobic and racist slurs. The RCMP would not comment on the allegations while the Code of Conduct proceedings are unresolved. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
Finally, prosecutors call it, quote, one of the largest murder cases ever charged in Ontario. Today, Kenneth Law is set to appear in a courtroom. He's charged with murder and abetting suicide in connection with 14 deaths across the province. But as Thomas Degler reports, Law is now facing a civil lawsuit over a teenager's death. And a warning, this story contains talk of suicide.
It's not easy for Leonardo Bedoya and Maria Lopez to speak of their daughter Yesenia 2 years after their loss. But when they do, they describe the 18-year-old as an enchanting girl with an infectious smile. A recent high school grad from Aurora, Ontario, who dreamt of one day becoming a police officer. Her death is now at the center of a $2 million lawsuit recently filed by her parents, seeking damages from several doctors and Kenneth Law. The alleged poison seller is already facing criminal charges of first-degree murder and abetting suicide in connection with 14 deaths, including Yesenia's. Her parents accuse Law of selling their daughter what they describe as a suicide kit that Yesenia used to end her life amid a mental health crisis.
They have every right to pursue a civil proceeding in parallel with a criminal proceeding.
York University law professor Suzanne Kyoto points out the standard of proof is higher for establishing criminal guilt than for civil liability. But
this is a really kind of cutting-edge issue that it's going to be difficult to work out in the courts. I think
Law has denied wrongdoing. In court today, a judge is expected to order him to stand trial on the criminal charges late next year. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday. I'm RC Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live downtown in our studios at CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This hour on the program, the United Nations is calling for a global AI fund to help developing countries keep up with the tech. We're going to hear how that might support nations currently lacking access to artificial intelligence. In addition, this hour on the program, over 2,000 experts are right now at the Association of Zoos and Aquariums conference in Calgary this week. The focus is promoting conservation at zoos instead of entertainment at zoos. So we're going to have a conversation about that as we think of our Assiniboine Park Zoo here. And then at 10 to 8, are you camping this weekend? Are you one of those folks that says it's late September, this is the best time to camp? We'll hear more about the concerns around camping, but the fun stuff. What do you need to know to have a good time? Right now, let's go to Megan Ketchison, who's here with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, the search continues for a 6-year-old boy in Shamattawa First Nation who has been missing for more than a day. Johnson Redhead, attended a breakfast program at the school in the northeastern Manitoba First Nation until 9 yesterday morning, but he didn't show up in class. RCMP rangers and about 100 volunteers from the community have helped in the search. An RCMP drone and police dog will also be helping today as well. And we'll hear from an Indigenous business owner on what she's seeing and doing ahead of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. She says sales are on the rise at Indigenous Nations Apparel Company, or INAC, at Polo Park. And she says she often is asked by other business owners how to recognize the day. She says it's important to include a time for reflection for our employees. And I'll have more coming up at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on here in weather and traffic. Good morning, Corey Funk.
Good morning.
And hello, Abby Adiami.
Good morning.
So, what's today going to bring?
Well, the north is going to be getting rain today. I know we've had our share of the rain. Now, the northern part of the province will be seeing a rain and cooler temperatures, while the south will enjoy like a mix of sun and clouds. Showers in some areas, though. Currently, Winnipeg 16 and cloudy at this time. We're starting off with cloudy conditions. This will clear up as we get into the morning. It's going to get breezy as we also get into the morning. Then that will be easing off as we approach the noon period. We'll see highs near 22 degrees for Winnipeg today, and then tonight expect some clouds to roll in. There's a slight chance of showers late in the evening, and temperatures drops to 12 degrees. So it's just going to be more of like cloudy skies in the south and then raining conditions in the north. Currently, we were having heavy downpours in Thompson, but now it's switched to light rains at 16, and Churchill is seeing light drizzle with some foggy conditions at 13. While down south, we're seeing temperatures at 10 degrees in Brandon and 14 in Morris with cloudy conditions, though most of those regions will see sunny skies later.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, your ride in this morning, how was it? We usually start there because you bike in.
Yeah, it was a little chilly actually this morning. I actually think I underdressed for the first time so far. Was not expecting that. So yeah, a little chilly, but otherwise fairly smooth overall. And so far it seems like a pretty smooth commute. Haven't heard of any major issues out there, but if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, there's a very big conference happening in Calgary this week. It's all about zoos, an international zoo conference in that city. More than 2,000 experts and professionals are hearing from conservation groups, with some saying the world is in a period of unprecedented species lost. And we have done many interviews looking at species that are at risk here on our show. Now, this meeting is being held at the Wilder Institute Calgary Zoo for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums annual conference. So it's an annual gathering. But as I mentioned, the focus is to figure out how zoos can make the shift toward conservation rather than entertainment. And there have been some changes at our Assiniboine Park Zoo in recent years around that. Dr. Chris Enright is Senior Director of Zoological Operations. He spoke with CBC host Faith Fundalo about this on Up to Speed yesterday.
So when we hear something like changing the focus from entertainment to conservation, I mean, those are pretty big principles. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, it's extremely important. You know, zoos have been doing conservation work for decades and doing it well. And it's really important for us to meet together and really find the best ways to do that conservation work. And whether it's in our own backyards or on the other side of the world, really come together as a community and make sure that this is what we live and breathe.
When Jessica Steiner, who is a senior advisor in conservation working at the Calgary Zoo, described this period of unprecedented species loss, is that something that folks are seeing, agree with? How did the folks there take that information or take that characterization?
Well, that really comes from looking at all of the scientific evidence of the loss of biodiversity really around the world. And zoos are one of the ways that we as humans can be connected to the natural world and really spark that empathy that drives us to change our behavior and make sure we are leaving room for wildlife. So as a modern accredited zoo, we not only tell that story, but we actually have to walk the talk also. And so it's important for us to be actively taking part in conservation programs like the grassland prairie butterfly programs, where we're releasing critically endangered butterflies into the wild. This meeting this week is really about sharing those best practices and ways to move forward so that we can benefit from the input and expertise of our colleagues from around the world.
What stood out for you in terms of what you could do practically or what you could implement here in Manitoba?
Oh, we do have quite a team here at the conference, and there's any number of learnings that we're going to take and share, actually. And so we'll apply things like assessing our education programs, looking at how other places are doing it, making sure they're as effective as they can be, looking at novel ways to incorporate volunteers into conservation programs that we already have on site. There's just any number of learnings, and it would be tough to point to just one.
It is kind of hard because when you hear the word conservation, that's a pillar, right? Something that you can have many meanings for. When you hear the word conservation, and in particular in your context, what does that mean to you?
Well, conservation is critically important to me, and to the Assiniboine Park Zoo. It's really inherent to a modern accredited zoo to have conservation as our focus. And to me, conservation is about making sure we leave room for wildlife in our world, and we make sure that wildlife and wild spaces will still be around for generations to come.
There is this argument that some zoos are still focused on entertainment and that they still don't benefit animals. Where do you sort of land in your unique frame? How do you see that?
Well, I see a modern accredited zoo as being incredibly beneficial. We offer a great window into the natural world and an opportunity for people to experience nature when there's large numbers of people, especially living in urban centers, who don't have the opportunity to experience the natural world, let alone, the raccoons in their backyards. So zoos are really a window for people who don't always have a window into the natural world. And so we can engage our community, we can offer an opportunity to experience the wonders of nature and really help spark conservation action in all of our guests, as well as direct conservation action that we take.
I know you mentioned being an accredited organization. Why is that important?
The accreditation is extremely important for a modern zoo, and the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is hosting this particular conference, is really the gold standard in zoo accreditation. It's a very rigorous assessment of how zoos operate and a series of best practices and expectations. And there's a very thorough vetting process that happens on a regular basis, and I'm proud to say that Assiniboine Park Zoo is accredited with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and it's really a mark of excellence in all areas of the operation. And how we maintain that excellence is really through participation in meetings like this and sharing of ideas and support from our community and all three levels of government to really keep us where we need to be as a modern zoo. And accreditation is a big piece of that.
Dr. Enright, if I asked you, if I told you 20 years ago that this conference would be talking about shifting the focus from entertainment to conservation, would you believe me?
Absolutely. Conservation has certainly been a big part of where we live for decades. And it's still a conversation to have because there's still so much work to be done.
Dr. Chris Enright is the Senior Director of Zoological Operations at Assiniboine Park Zoo. Now, he was in conversation there with CBC's Faith Fundell and Up to Speed after talking about what he learned at this week's Association of Zoos and Aquariums annual conference that's being held in Calgary.
Orange is not simply a color. It's an acknowledgement of truth, a shade of support, a step towards reconciliation. Join residential school survivors and allies September 30 at the Wasay Healing Center's Orange Shirt Day Walk for Survivors and Powwow, proudly sponsored by CBC. Walk starts at 11 a.m. at the Forks. Powwow is at 1 p.m. at the RBC Convention Center. Support truth. Step into reconciliation. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
So if you are going to that walk, what are you going to wear? What is on your orange shirt? Where did you purchase your orange shirt? All questions that Manitobans might be asking. Coming up in the news at 6:30 with Megan Ketchison, we will hear more about how First Nations artist in Winnipeg, and not the first person to say this, is acknowledging that her artwork, or concerned, I should say, that her artwork is being stolen from companies who are selling shirts for Orange Shirt Day. So she says it has been happening for years and it does need to stop. We're going to outline exactly what the issue is. So stay tuned for the news at 6:30. Right now, though, In the fast-paced race for AI technology, which we've talked a lot about on this show, the United Nations is concerned that developing countries are being left behind. To address this, the UN has now proposed a global artificial intelligence fund to help those countries access the latest technology, training, and resources. And to talk about it, Carmi Levy is here, technology columnist and journalist. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Great to be with you.
So can you explain how a fund could support countries that don't have good AI?
Yeah, it absolutely could. I mean, AI, like other sort of major technology revolutions, is expensive. AI requires huge amounts of compute-intensive hardware. So you got to have big computers, big data centers, high-capacity networks. You have to have the data. You have to have the models. You have to have the training. You may have to revamp your entire education system in order to keep up. And so it demands resources that a lot of developing nations might simply not have. Now, we've seen this with earlier technology revolutions like the personal computer revolution or the high-speed internet revolution or wireless, where they simply couldn't afford to build all of that capability, put that technology in people's hands to the same degree that perhaps we can here in Canada or in the U.S. or other developed nations. So what the UN is trying to get at is recognize that there's a disparity, recognize that with AI that is particularly acute, and make a number of recommendations so that we can minimize that disparity. And the high-level advisory body, it's part of the Secretary General's office. They've issued a report that makes a number of recommendations, like having standards for AI so we all know that we're talking about the same thing, how to provide resources for better training and education, creating an AI office within the UN so that they can pull together all the different initiatives, many of which are already underway, and make sure that they're consistent, that they're not at cross purposes to each other, that we're not reinventing the wheel. And probably the most important recommendation of this report is funding. They want to create a global AI fund so that developing nations can contribute to this fund and ensure that developed nations can contribute to this fund and ensure that developing nations can access it, develop these capabilities and competencies because they can't afford to do it on their own. And that's important because if you have disparity, we're all going to pay the price.
Are there risks associated with developing these capabilities and competencies for developing countries?
I mean, there certainly are. I mean, we've talked about the risks of AI in general, right? And by moving forward with the technology, we expose ourselves to significant job loss. There's the misinformation, disinformation problem. There's deep fakes. The AI, every technology comes with a bit of a dark side, AI particularly so. But if we don't make those investments, then those developing countries are going to be at especially high risk of falling victims to this. And then, of course, they won't be able to keep up with other countries that are making those investments, which means they'll fall even further behind economically. So it's almost like we know that AI comes with some concerns, but we know that that not investing in it will be even more problematic than, sort of diving in with both feet.
Can you give us a concrete example, Carmi, just of a country, that would already be falling behind with AI, a developing country?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's look at Canada, right? This is very close to home because we tend to think of ourselves as a developed nation, but in reality, we have significant geographic disparity. The further away you get from an urban area, the less the investment is in technologies, and so Canada is laden with examples of rural areas that don't have access to the basics, high-speed internet access, wireless access, and the kinds of support resources that would allow them to participate in the digital economy. And
just to interject here, could this fund then be accessed by Canada?
Conceivably, we would be a net contributor to it, not a net taker.
Yeah.
However, participating in this process would raise awareness of the disparities that we've already been dealing with closer to home. So, we kind of have to clean up our own backyard before we get involved in anyone else's.
What measures do you think would help create a level playing field with AI, or are we too far gone for that? Because as you've been talking about this, when you talk about AI, we talk about the concerns on the back end, but this involves infrastructure that would have been developed over decades.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to hope to eliminate that disparity completely, I think is a bit too much to ask at this point. We're never going to get quite there. However, we can take steps to at least minimize what that gap is and at least allow developing nations to at least play some part in this revolution and not fall too far behind. I think certainly sharing resources. We talk about having a common database for what a data set should look like, what common data center design should look like, what educational curriculum needs to be, and so that these developing nations would not have to build all this out on their own. They could access these resources. We would open source them, and they would be accessible to anyone so that nobody would have to develop any of this from scratch. They could take advantage of learnings from those societies, from those countries that have already made those investments and are starting to reap the rewards. We have to learn to share because if all we do is compete and hold these capabilities close to the vest, everyone ultimately loses.
All right, Carmi, thanks for the conversation. Pleasure to have you on.
Great being with you, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
That's Carmi Levy, a technology and analyst and journalist.
Poplar River First Nation, let's get to know each other a little bit better. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to your community September 23rd to 27th. I can't wait to meet you and discover the incredible stories that make Poplar River unique. CBC's Communities in Focus, September 23rd to 27th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
Okay, listeners, are you ready to be annoyed? I shouldn't be projecting. Maybe you won't be annoyed by this. But if you have one of these and the ads pop up, I'm holding up my phone to YouTube. If you have a phone, most of us have phones, many of us have phones, and you're annoyed by the ads that pop up, we're about to hear in our business news this morning with Crystalie Ramlakan that now, apparently, YouTube can show you an ad even when your screen is paused. So even when you're not engaging, ads are going to start popping up. We're going to hear a little bit more about that in our business news. Also, our business report coming up. We're going to hear more about Air Canada. As we know, they avoided a strike this week. If you've been following that news, the pilots, a new tentative deal for the pilots is being discussed. But pilots still need to approve that contract. So we're going to find out more about the analysis of how business experts are expecting that conversation is going to go. So Crystalie Ramlakan joins us with our business news here on CBC after our local cast. In Winnipeg, it is overcast, and the drive is pretty good this morning. We've been reminding you, because this started on Monday, that 18th Street in Brandon, which is, of course, the major street that runs right through town, construction started there on Monday, and that's going to be a huge project that has many phases, and it'll be ongoing. So if you live in Brandon, you likely know this, and you found your workaround already. But if you have any issues on your morning commute, whether you are on your bike, on your feet, or in your car, you can always call us at 788-3093. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is cloudy and 16. The clouds will clear up this morning. We're looking at a high of 22. The search continues for a 6-year-old boy in Shamattawa First Nation who has been missing for more than a day. Johnson Redhead attended a breakfast program at the school in the northeastern Manitoba First Nation until about 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, but he didn't show up in class. RCMP Sergeant Paul Maneg is in the community helping with the search.
6 years old, this is too young to be going missing. We do have temperatures working in our favor. It's still like 21 degrees up here right now. We have that working in our favor. It's just, we need to know where he is.
Maneg says about 50 to 100 volunteers from the community helped with the search yesterday and says a drone and police dog will help too. The Canadian Rangers are helping with the search. Lieutenant Colonel Vincent Couturier is the commanding officer with the 4th Canadian Ranger Patrol Group. He says 8 Rangers based in Shamattawa started helping with the ground search efforts yesterday.
The Canadian Ranger Patrol that is on site is from that community, so I can assume that they are concerned.
Couturier says given Shamattawa is mainly accessible by air, mobility will be a big challenge for searchers. Meanwhile, 4 members of the Winnipeg Volunteer Search and Rescue Group arrived in Shamattawa yesterday. Manitoba's new energy policy acknowledges that oil and gas won't be phased out as energy sources anytime soon. The province is slated to release a policy today that states fossil fuels will remain in use until cleaner sources of energy are more plentiful. Bruce Laurier is the president of Ivy Foundation, which spends its money on advancing the green economy. He says the recognition that non-renewable fuels are sticking around for a while makes sense.
It's not like a huge revelation, but at the same time, I don't think it's a huge walk back. I think most people that are following the electricity sector, would probably say, well, that's a pretty reasonable response.
The Canoe government has promised to make Manitoba carbon neutral by 2050. In international news, a new estimate is out today on how many Russian soldiers have been killed in the war in Ukraine, and it includes details on who makes up the majority of fatalities and where they're from. Here's Dominic Velitis.
The new data shows more than 70,000 Russians have now died on the front line in Ukraine. And for the first time, it's civilians who signed up for the armed forces making up the majority. Previously, inmates from Russian jails who were initially offered pardons in exchange for service were in first place, with most of them dying in the battle for Bakhmut. The data, which has been collated and analysed by the BBC and Mediazona, was sourced from media reports and social networks, and it shows how the profile of Russian volunteers dying on the front line is now changing. Most are in their 40s and 50s, but around 250 were in their 60s, with the oldest killed aged 71. The majority of those signing up to fight in Ukraine came from small rural towns in parts of Russia where work is difficult to find and poorly paid. Dominic Velitis for CBC News in Riga, Latvia.
In Winnipeg, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, also known as Orange Shirt Day, is fast approaching. September 30th was declared a statutory holiday for the province a year ago. The day is meant for reflection on the impacts of the residential school system. Michelle Cameron owns INAC, Indigenous Nations Apparel Company in Polo Park. She's seen a rise in sales ahead of the holiday.
It's a day that we need to be recognized as a day of acknowledgement and what has happened in Canada and Canadian history. So for us to be given that holiday as a statutory holiday, it means a lot to us in the Indigenous community.
Cameron says she's often asked by other business owners how to recognize Orange Shirt Day. She says it's important to include a time of reflection for employees. And an Indigenous artist in Winnipeg says she's had to deal with online sellers replicating her art without her consent. Jackie Travers says she has seen her designs on orange T-shirts, especially leading up to the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation at the end of this month. Travers says she recently noticed 2 Facebook-based sellers using her design without permission.
They don't credit me. They don't. What mainly happens is they're making profit off the trauma of Indian residential schools. They just know that it's a good time to sell T-shirts. So they're just basically profiting off, the death of children.
Travers says she tried placing a watermark on her designs, but they remove it or put something else on top of it. She believes most of the sellers are U.S.-based companies, and they never respond to her messages. CBC has reached out to the sellers in question, but did not receive a response as of last night. Travers says she cannot afford to hire a lawyer. And that's the CBC News for Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Megan, catch us in at our news center this morning. Well, we're about to hear the weather forecast, and then after we do, we're going to talk fall camping, yay or nay. But first, let's let Abby weigh in on what's going to be happening today.
Yes, across the province on this last weekend of summer, expect a sunny condition down south, and then temperatures will be cooler up north. Winnipeg currently 16 and cloudy. We're expecting the clouds to clear as we get into the morning. Some breezy conditions will ease off by the noon period. We then warm up to 22 degrees. And for tonight, we may see some clouds roll in and a slight chance of showers will cool down to 12. Brandon, clear at 10 at this time. Expecting some clouds to roll in this afternoon with light breezy conditions. Temperatures will warm up to 19. Thompson, 16 and light showers at this time. More showers and drizzle expected throughout the day, with temperatures falling to 12 at around the afternoon period. Further north in Churchill, 13 and misty conditions were seen at this time. Periods of rain and the chance of thunderstorms in the forecast, with a high near 19 degrees. Down in Dauphin, it is cloudy and 13 degrees. This will clear as you get into the morning with breezy west winds. Your highs will reach 21. Gimli, currently 16 and cloudy. For the Interlake region, we should be seeing some clear morning. We'll get to a high of 21. Steinbach is sitting at 16 and cloudy at this time, though this cloudy condition will be clearing up, and then you get to a high of 21. Morris is at 14 and cloudy at this time. Also for that region, we should expect sunny conditions with highs around 22. Showers are actually likely for tonight. So for those that will be attending the ATV Derby, this would definitely bring some mud for your quads.
Is that in Saint Jean Baptiste again?
Yes, Saint Jean Baptiste. So definitely you should be getting some mud for your quad this night. Winnipeg right now, we are at 16 degrees.
So I have something to float with you, friend.
Bring it on.
So what do you think? We'll go explore Manitoba. We'll drive.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll go for a walk, a ride, take some pictures. Beautiful fall. And then we can get ourselves a couple of rooms with some cushy pillows and in a hotel somewhere and and have a nice vacay. Or if you want, Abby, we could just pitch a tent somewhere.
Woohoo!
What do you think?
Whatever would make me pitch a tent means it's just a day trip. I will not pitch a tent. I'm just going to drive back home.
I know this about you.
Drive back home. No pitching of tents.
I am also nay to the fall camping, but the woohooer in the background is Corey Funk. We have an interview about this coming up this half hour.
Corey.
You said this is your favorite time of year to camp,
of course.
actually.
It's you're not worried about being hot in your tent, which is like the worst.
Fair
It's
enough, okay.
nice, and you can get out when you go hiking. It's nice and cool. You can kind of bundle up, and usually the campground is a little bit quieter.
But windy, rainy.
Well, it's just wear a rain jacket.
Curry, there's a device in the room that controls the temperature from warm to cold.
Nah, you got to get out and follow the smells. It's just
That's
like this.
Abby defending the stay in a hotel. You can use a thermostat.
Defending a stay in a hotel.
No.
Shame.
Not for you.
No, not for me. You got to get out. You got to get in that tent. Enjoy the fall.
Well, I'm going to do the interview on fall camping this half hour, so we're going to hear all about it, and it'll be proponents of fall camping.
And everyone's going to know your bias now.
They will all know my bias. It's fair enough, but it's a camping story. I feel pretty good. I still feel like I'm journalistically sound here. I would like to know, before we turn to traffic, what your favorite places are to camp in the fall in Manitoba.
Oh, well, normally we will do Swamp Donkey, either my wife or I, in Falcon Lake. It's that adventure race there. So
Beautiful.
We'll camp out there, and then you romp through the wood, bike, canoe, orienteer through the woods. So
see, I've rented the cabin out there before.
I
need a roof. I don't know. I need a roof.
No, it's fun. It's fun. It's great, and highly suggest Falcon Lake in the fall. It's gorgeous, all the colors, and you can get on the lake.
All right. How's the commute?
Very quiet actually overall. Haven't heard many issues at all really this morning. But if something's going on where you are, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Corey Funk with traffic. Abby Ediemi with your weather forecast. I'm RC Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. Kevin Ipatebo behind the controls of YouTube this morning. You might be watching the show. Now, speaking of watching the show, you're about to see Crystalie Ramlakan. There she is, joining us via Zoom with our business news, and also apparently wanting to weigh in on our team discussion about camping versus in the fall versus grabbing a hotel.
No camping any time of the year for me.
Really? Like not even when it's nicer out? Why?
It's just so uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to sleep on the ground. Like, my bones ache now that I'm getting older. And I want running water. I want to be able to use a bathroom properly if, when I need to.
I feel like camping
not for me.
I feel like it's one of those things, too, where it's like, it's kind of like hockey. If you don't like hockey, people start to question, how Canadian you are, like that whole stereotype thing. I feel like that happens with camping, too. People be like, you don't like camping? And I'm like, no, and I still want to wear the big burly sweater, and I'm, but I just don't want to pitch a tent.
Yeah, exactly. I love hockey.
Yeah.
I'm okay with hockey and winter and all that kind of stuff, and Tim Hortons and everything else, whatever is Canadian.
Let's talk business news here this morning. TD Bank is shaking up its leadership, I understand. Why are people paying such close attention to this move in particular?
Well, that's because the bank is entangled in a money laundering scandal in the U.S. right now. So Raymond Chun will replace Chief Executive Bharat Masrani, who is retiring next year. And this change was announced yesterday, and it also includes several other executive changes. Now, this comes as the bank is working to resolve the investigations into deficiencies into its anti-money laundering program, which allegedly allowed hundreds of millions of dollars of illicit drug profits to flow through the bank. And while Masrani was announcing his retirement after 38 years, he actually said that these shortcomings in the program were his to bear. So he said on the conference call that this took place under his watch as CEO, and he takes full responsibility. Now, these investigations have been a major overhang for the bank. And, it didn't help in the proposed acquisition of First Horizon Bank last year, which fell through. It didn't end up happening. And now Chun has said that remediation is the bank's top priority, and it's looking to write its next chapter. And some analysts say both the timing and the naming of Chun, who has mostly Canadian experience, is kind of a surprise here, since the bank will be dealing with U.S. regulators a lot with this issue. And Marcy, the bank has taken more than $3 billion U.S. in charges related to these investigations.
To another story, Air Canada avoided a strike this week, as we've discussed, with that tentative deal for pilots. But pilots actually still need to approve the contracts. How do you think that's going to go?
Well, some experts say low entry-level pay for pilots could be a stumbling block here. So the agreement does include a 42% raise over 4 years, but some could still feel left out. And that's because, pilots earn far less in the first 4 years they work for Air Canada. But the proposed deal only cuts that 4-year period to 2 years. And after a recent hiring surge, as many as 2,000 of the 5,200 pilots earn entry-level wages. And, they're not necessarily inexperienced either. Many come on board after lengthy careers at other airlines rather than straight out of flight school. So some pilots worry that this could prompt pushback and jeopardize the deal, which is up for a vote next month. Now, Air Canada says the agreement has been endorsed by the Union Negotiating Committee. The airline says the deal also addresses other key issues, including work rules, retirement, and overall quality of life benefits. And it says it helps close that gap in wages between Canadian and American pilots, which was such a sticking point in this deal.
And finally, before we look at the markets, under A for annoying, I understand that YouTube can now show us ads even if our screens are paused.
Yes, so they're going to get you one way or another. First it was longer ads that you couldn't skip when you're watching YouTube videos, and now even pausing will not let you escape. So the Google-owned platform says it has widely rolled out pause ads to all advertisers, so when the video is paused, an ad will still pop up on the side of the screen. Now, obviously, there's a business case from an advertising lens for this. Google says this is seamless for viewers and allows them to learn more about a brand. And it says it's been a beneficial update for the entire YouTube ecosystem. And the company says the ads are profitable and are commanding premium pricing from advertisers. But, users certainly have expressed their displeasure on social media for these. But users can avoid ads altogether with a YouTube premium subscription, which is usually around $13 a month. So this could also be a strategy to push people towards getting a subscription and paying for it.
Yeah, it very well could be. What's happening in the markets this morning?
In Europe, markets are lower as investors digested a slew of central bank rate decisions this week and their impact on the global economy. So Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, markets are gaining. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is down 31 cents to $71.64 US per barrel. Gold is up 26.60 to $2,611.70 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.06 of a cent to 73.7 cents US.
All right. Thank you, Crystal Lee.
Thanks, Marcy.
I hope you have a great last weekend of summer. Abby and I will call you when we're planning our trip, and then Corey will go with his family camping.
Okay, sounds good. Book me a room.
Crystal Lee Ramlakan with our team regularly each and every morning with our business news here on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Friday. It is a 6:45 a.m. It's cloudy in Winnipeg. It's 17 degrees. Brandon is clear and 10. Thompson, light rain and 16 degrees right now. In Winnipeg, a high of 22. It's going to be windy and gusty winds west 30 to 50. And then more showers coming, but not until tonight in our forecast. And a low of 12 tonight. So we're getting there, feeling a little bit more fallish today in particular. Corey Funk is in actually to introduce a piece of music we have chosen to play for you on the show next.
Yes, this one goes out to all the parents who are constantly exposed to children's music, which is irksome to say the least. Like, let's be serious here. Like, Elmo, great guy, but if I have to hear him sing one more time.
You don't like Elmo?
Oh, no. See, exactly. Oh, like I'm just getting the shivers thinking about it. Yeah, so when I heard that John Legend
Elmo loves you.
No, see.
Okay, I'm done. Sorry, I'm finished.
So John Legend is coming out with a children's album. I was like, yes.
Oh, I love John Legend.
I know, exactly. And it's produced by actually one of my favorite artists, Sufjan Stevens, who's like this whimsical indie artist as well. I was like, thank goodness. So I have this song that I'm so excited to share because it's been on repeat in my household now because it's actually tolerable. And it's a bit of a spelling lesson from John Legend.
L-O-V-E, love, it's easy to spell. And if you know it for yourself, everybody else, well, they can tell. When L-O-V-E, love, gets into your heart, it sparkles like a star, and everyone can see how bright you are, because love, love, love makes you feel better. Love, love, love keeps us together. Love, 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 warm like a sweater. Aren't you glad to know that you got love? L-O-V-E, love, it's my favorite word. It sings out like a bird, the sweetest song I've heard, sweeter than dessert. And L-O-V-E, love, it don't cost a thing. It's free for you and me. So you'll give love, and I'll give love, and we all can give our love, love, love. Makes you feel better. Love, love, love keeps us together. Love, 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 warm like a sweater. Aren't you glad to know that you got love, love, love? Makes your day brighter. Love, love, love glows like a fire. Love, 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 aren't you inspired to live a life where every day is love? Yeah, love, love, love. Love, love, love. Let's live a life where every day is L-O-V-E, love. It's easy to spell, and if you know it for yourself, you can give it out as well. So everybody else feels love, love, love. Yeah, love, love, love. Hey, love, love, love. Let's live a life where every day is love.
Hi, I'm Sarocha Coelho, host of the Saturday afternoon call-in show Just Asking, now expanding to 2 hours.
And I'm Ian Hannamansing, host of the Sunday afternoon call-in show Cross Country Checkup.
Whether it's world events
or what's happening in your backyard,
every weekend we connect Canada live.
That's Just Asking with Saroja Coelho, Saturday afternoons at 4 Eastern.
And Cross Country Checkup with Ian Hannamansing, Sunday afternoons at 4 Eastern on CBC Radio 1.
So I was just looking up some information about fall camping in Manitoba. So select Manitoba Provincial Park campgrounds will remain open as late as Thanksgiving. So you've still got plenty of time. Although, of course, as we've been mentioning, this weekend marks the last official really weekend of summer. It's all over tomorrow. So it is a chance to get out and go if you are a fan of fall camping, like my next guest, Kevin Callan, outdoor enthusiast and expert and author of several books on camping and canoe tripping. Good morning.
Hey, how you doing? Fall is coming. Fall is coming.
I know. We're good here. We just had actually a big team chat, and most of our team is not a fan of camping, period, and more people are hotels. So convince us that not only should we love camping, but we should consider camping in the fall in this country.
Oh, it's fantastic this time of year. It's my favorite time of year to go camping, actually. You think about the cool nights, warm days, no bugs, no heat wave. Like going back to June, portaging across on some trail and being bitten alive by mosquitoes and black flies and everything else. The colors are changing; they're vibrant colors. They're actually the true color of the tree. The birds are going crazy because they're getting ready to migrate, or they're feeding, and all the other animals. Everything's alive out there. And early sunsets, late sunrises. There's nobody else out there because nobody else is going.
Lots of reasons. All right. So usually the sticking point for people that don't enjoy camping, period, is going to be the conditions and where you sleep and what you're sleeping on. What's the latest in terms of gear that will make that more comfortable?
Yeah, a good down sleeping bag. Down is a little bit more cozy than synthetic. Mind you, if down gets wet, it's useless. But when you're getting the sleeping bag, 0 to -7. If you don't have that type of bag, get 2 summer bags, put them together. Watch out for the stores that will sell you extreme temperature sleeping bags, meaning that they'll say it's a 10-degree bag, but then it's extreme to -7. It's not. Those things don't work. The other thing is the tent is really, really important. You have to have a 3 to 4 season tent. And what that means is it's more ventilated. So it's more breathable. And what will happen in the fall, you're in the tent, it's getting cold, and then your breath is going out, and then the moisture goes up the tent, and then also it comes raining down at you. In the morning, you're completely soaked by your own breath. So you need it to be vented. So if you're getting a 3 or 4 season bag, so if you use that tent that you used in midsummer, it's not going to work for you.
Is there a big market for secondhand, gear that you would suggest is a safe market to be buying things in? Because it can get very expensive if you're heading out with all the equipment.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, actually, I would join a nature group in your area, an outdoor club, and then beg, steal, and borrow from them. A fall bag you can rent and just put a liner in it. And yeah, that's the thing about off-season camping, winter camping especially too. It gets really expensive, and you're only going to go once in the fall. Why buy all that stuff for just one trip, right?
How should people prepare for wildlife? We've been doing a lot of stories this year about the increase in wildlife, even in Winnipeg, actually increase in coyotes, saying that if we're in our parks, just they're part of our ecosystem now. And we also have a lot of black bears in Manitoba, which we always do, but this year in particular, populations are looking strong. What should people understand about cohabitating? Because you're camping, especially in the fall, in their backyard, and all those animals are trying to plump up for the winter. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody thinks that bears are slowing down right now. They're not. They will eventually, but right now they're all excited to get as many calories as possible before winter hits, right? So, I hate to say it, but if a predaceous bear, a bear that wants to have you for a snack, if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen now because it wants to eat as much as possible. So make sure you got that bear spray on your holster instead of actually in your pack. And if you ever had a predaceous bear come up to you, not just a normal bear, a predaceous bear that it wants to eat you, be very aggressive towards that bear.
In terms of, favorite activities when you're out camping, you mentioned, canoeing, getting out on the water. What else are some of your favorite things?
I love backpacking, and your area is fantastic. The colors are just so vibrant where you guys are. And I like backpacking in the fall because in the summertime, it's okay, but it's hot, it's buggy, and you got to pack in your pack all day. It's like the longest portage ever. But in the fall, it's a nice, cool days. You're immersing yourself in the forest. I actually like walking in the forest in the fall because of the colors are changing to their true color. So it's really nice to be with that. And you're not sweating all day in the fall when you're backpacking.
We saw a lot of interest in camping during the pandemic for obvious reasons. Has the interest been sustained?
It's just dropping. Yeah, and that's normal. You look at anything like a pandemic or a world war, so many people rushed out into nature to soothe their soul, right? And then once they realize, we can go back to what we used to do, that's what's happening. So a lot of people are selling their RVs off and their canoes off right now. But the people that did stay, they're actually more ethical and they're more experienced. And we're actually got a really good, solid group of people going out camping right now, especially in the backcountry.
And I guess just last, do you have any advice on sort of what to pack? We talked, clothing, tents, where to find things, all the gear. But what about for food? What's your suggestion there to have a to not overpack food, but to make sure you've got what you might need to have an enjoyable experience?
Yeah, I love cooking for trips. I dehydrate my own meals to lighten them instead of buying those packages. And you just get like curry sauces, spaghetti sauces, and put them in your oven. You don't need a dehydrator, and put them at low temperature. And they peel off like fruit leather. And then you put them in boiling water when you get to camp, and it turns right back into the sauce. So I just came back from a trip. It was a 16-day canoe trip, and everything we ate was dehydrated. And we're able to carry 16 days of food in one pack.
Are there good websites or things that you would recommend if people are looking for places to go for fall camping prep, or even meal ideas or gear?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. And there's a lot of videos out there as well. There's one actually that a lot of people don't know about canoeing. It's an old site, but still useful. It's called myccr.com. And if you want to know about any other canoe trip or canoe route across Canada, it's on there. It's a great, and also that your local outdoor clubs and things like that will have their websites with information. And like I said, it's really good to beg, steal, and borrow from them if you want to give it a try.
I love that, especially since we are a very big canoeing province in Manitoba. Plenty of places to enjoy it. Thank you very much, Kevin, and enjoy camping.
Yeah, you too.
I will if I go. Kevin Callan, an outdoor enthusiast and expert and author of several books on camping and canoe tripping. We thought we'd have some fun this morning and just position the interview to have him convince our team, which is, if you take a head count, more in favor of hotels than pitch in a tent. But if you are heading out camping this weekend in Manitoba, doing some fall camping, where do you go? Why do you love it? 788-3205. It's 3 minutes to 7 o'clock, and filling in for Heather Wells this morning is Megan Ketcherson, and she's here with our headlines.
Well, a search continues for a 6-year-old boy in Shamattawa First Nation who has been missing for more than a day. Johnson Redhead attended a breakfast program at a school in the northeastern Manitoba First Nation until about 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, but he didn't show up for class. And Manitoba is slated to unveil a new energy policy today. The province faces a growing demand for electricity. An excerpt from the new Manitoba energy policy acknowledges the province won't be able to do away with oil and gas in the short term. Premier Wab Kinew has set a goal for the province to be carbon neutral by 2050. And we'll have more at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Cloudy, 17 in Winnipeg, winds are southwest at 6. And in the city today, we should be clearing this morning from this cloud cover you can see that is over downtown. Winds will be west 30 to 50, and then it'll calm down a bit wind-wise around noon, a high of 22. Tonight, increasing cloud in Winnipeg, and then we do have a few showers expected to begin late this evening and then extend overnight into tomorrow morning. And then it should clear by tomorrow night. But again, tomorrow's going to be really windy. But sticking with your Friday, clearing this morning, high 22 and a windy day. If you need us on the morning commute, please call us at 788-3093 and we'll pass along any of the issues you have to other people listening and driving, walking, or biking. After 7 o'clock, there's a new children's book that we're going to explore. It explores a young Anishinaabe boy's first time attending a powwow. And we're going to talk with the award-winning journalist and author behind it. It's called It's Powwow Time, so stay tuned for that interview. In addition, at 7:40, Instagram is overhauling privacy settings and features for underage users. We're going to hear more about restrictions on the new accounts, how effective they could be as well, keeping kids safer when using the popular app. Really interesting rules they've put in place here, and if you have a teen in your house, you probably want to hear the interview about whether or not these will be effective and how you should be involved in monitoring and getting your teens using these new rules, should that be something you want to introduce in your family. So that's at 7:40. Right now, the 1 minute to 7 o'clock, and World Report's next. Stay with us.
On the current.
That she gets a lot more freedom because I don't have to have eyes on her. Like if she's off playing.
A growing number of parents are using apps and air tags to track where their children are, even what those children are doing. Experts say that can threaten their autonomy, but some parents say it's actually giving their kids more freedom. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Britain is having a Me Too moment.
This case combines some of the most horrific elements of the cases involving Jimmy Savile, Jeffrey Epstein, and Harvey Weinstein.
That is, one of the lawyers representing a group of women, including 3 Canadians who accused Mohammed Al Fayed of sexual assault and rape. Al-Fayed was the father of Princess Diana's partner Dodi, and he owned the British luxury department store Harrods, which is now being sued in a civil case. The CBC's Crystal Gamansing is in London, where Al-Fayed's accusers just spoke. Crystal, take us through the allegations being brought forward.
The four lawyers in the room really laid out a clear explanation of why they believe that Harrods has accountability here, saying that they'll be using the civil legal system to try and get justice for their 37 clients. They said that these clients are from right around the world, including 3 Canadians. They highlighted the fact that these women, these alleged victims, most cases very young, early 20s, some of them even younger than that, how they were selected specifically, that they were surveilled, that there were people who would follow them, that there were video cameras that watched their every move, that they would be threatened. And even in some cases, we heard from one victim by the name of Natasha, an alleged victim, that she had to undergo invasive medical tests.
I was never given those results. I was subjected to AIDS and STD testing without consent. And now, believe in hindsight, I was checked for my purity.
Harrods does say it is appalled by the allegations of abuse by Mohammed Al-Fayed. He, of course, owned the department store up until 2010. And they are also, however, saying that there are mechanisms in place for anyone who was harmed during their time, and that those mechanisms have been in place since 2023.
A high-profile case, to be sure, Crystal, with a high-profile legal team. Tell us more about who they are.
One of the members that was here today was Gloria Allred. Of course, she is known as one of the world's leading lawyers in terms of women's rights. She talked about how this case is yet another one of high-profile, powerful men abusing his powers and the system around him allowing it to happen.
Crystal Gamansing in London. Thanks, Crystal.
You're welcome.
The United Nations Security Council is meeting today to address the growing fear of war between Israel and Hezbollah. Israeli fighter jets pounded Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon, and today Hezbollah is responding with 140 rockets fired into northern Israel. Abby Kugadasan reports.
In some of the most intense bombings since October 7th, the Israeli military says it has hit more than 100 Hezbollah targets, including rocket launchers inside Lebanon. Anshel Pfeffer is an Israeli journalist.
What happened overnight seems to be a couple of clicks on the dial towards an all-out war.
These strikes followed twin attacks across Lebanon earlier this week, targeting pagers and walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah members. Dozens of people were killed and thousands were injured, including civilians. Across Lebanon, deep concern about what could come next. Sally Abu Al-Jud is a journalist there.
They're scared. People were scared also to use their devices after what happened.
Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah has vowed retaliation against Israel, but did not provide further details. Israel has not commented on the explosions, but it is widely believed it is behind the complex operation. In a clear sign that some of the IDF's focus is shifting, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant spoke of a new phase in the war. A new goal, too, to ensure that more than 60,000 Israelis can return home near the northern border with Lebanon. Some IDF troops are now being diverted there.
What we're hearing is that the plan is for a very limited incursion.
Travers says that hasn't been confirmed, but a recent poll shows this is what 52% of Jewish Israelis want, a broad-scale war in Lebanon. Western leaders in Washington and London are urging restraint, and the UN Security Council is holding an emergency session today. Abby Kouadas in CBC News, Berlin.
We're getting a better sense of the toll the war in Ukraine has taken on Russia, the number of those killed, and who they were. Dominic Valitis is in Riga, Latvia, with the details.
The new data shows more than 70,000 Russians have now died on the front line in Ukraine. And for the first time, it's volunteers, civilians who signed up for the armed forces, making up the majority. Previously, inmates from Russian jails who were initially offered pardons in exchange for service were in first place, with most of them dying in the battle for Bakhmut. The data, which has been collated and analysed by the BBC and independent website Mediazona, was sourced from media reports and social networks, and it shows how the profile of Russian volunteers dying on the front line is now changing. Most are in their 40s and 50s, but around 250 were in their 60s, with the oldest killed aged 71. And according to the data, the majority of those signing up to fight in Ukraine came from small rural towns in parts of Russia where work is difficult to find and poorly paid. Meanwhile, Ukraine, which only rarely comments on its battlefield casualties, said earlier this year more than 30,000 of its troops had died in the war, although estimates based on US intelligence suggest that figure could be far higher. Dominic Velitis for CBC News in Riga, Latvia.
The CBC has obtained court documents laying out graphic details of alleged racism and sexism by a group of RCMP officers in BC. 3 members of the Coquitlam detachment are facing dismissal for their participation in a private chat group through the encrypted Signal messaging app. A search warrant obtained by the Force's Professional Standards Unit lays out the allegations against them. Jason Proctor reports.
In one private chat group conversation, a Mountie allegedly joked about tasering unarmed black people. In another, a different officer allegedly called a sexual assault victim dumb, adding a vile misogynistic slur. According to a search warrant obtained by CBC, a member of the Coquitlam RCMP who belonged to the group stepped forward to complain about what he called atrocious, racist and horrible behavior by his colleagues. Constable Sam Sodi complained they belittled Indigenous people, evoking racist stereotypes. And he also said one of the 3 officers now facing dismissal mocked a domestic assault victim. The 3 Mounties have been suspended since June 2021. A code of conduct hearing for the men was supposed to begin in Surrey on Monday, but has now been adjourned until next March, more than 4 years after Sodi first stepped forward. According to the warrant, the complaint also led to a review of thousands of messages the officers sent through the RCMP's own chat logs, finding evidence they engaged in frequently offensive usage of homophobic and racist slurs. The RCMP would not comment on the allegations while the Code of Conduct proceedings are unresolved. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
And finally, fake news, misinformation online. There's too much of it, say NDP, Bloc, and Green Party officials. Yesterday, at the public inquiry into foreign interference, the NDP suggested what's really needed is a social media watchdog. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
It's like playing whack-a-mole.
Yes, exactly. Lucy Watson, the NDP's national director, tells lawyers at the inquiry her political party is fighting a losing battle, trying to find and shut down disinformation circulating online. Fake news stories with inflammatory accusations about their leader Jagmeet Singh pop up on social media daily. Watson says they've reported the posts to the government task force that monitors interference.
They acknowledged receipt, and that was essentially the communication.
Do you find this satisfactory?
No.
The NDP also flags the fake posts to social media platforms, but in the rare chance the companies take them down a week later, Watson says the damage is done. The NDP wants Ottawa to create a social media watchdog.
We don't have the internal resources to be monitoring this kind of activity in the way that, frankly, it needs to be monitored, given the really profound impact that it has on the political landscape.
Without question, Watson says, online rhetoric could lead to real violence against members of parliament. Many politicians have reported a recent increase in intense public harassment. Just this week, Singh confronted protesters outside of the House of Commons after they followed him and called him names. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app, on YouTube. It's a cloudy start to Friday. The last Friday of the summer. Think about this. The moon is glimmering. Mosquitoes are buzzing. Mini donuts are dropping. That's a line from a book that we're going to talk to the author about this hour. Do you remember going to your first cultural event? We're going to talk to the author behind a new children's book that takes us along on a boy's first powwow experience. So the book launch was in Winnipeg last night here locally, and we're going to hear more about it. In addition, this hour on the program, coming up at 7:40, we're going to be hearing some advice about Instagram, because Instagram's rolling out new accounts targeting users under 18. So there's enhanced privacy and parental controls. We'll find out more about how they work and what you might need to know if you're navigating that in your own family. Right now, let's go to Megan Ketchison for news headlines. Hi, Megan.
Hello. Well, as many as 100 people are searching for a little boy who was missing in Shamattawa. Johnson Redhead went to a breakfast program at the school in the northeastern Manitoba First Nation on Wednesday morning, but he didn't show up in class. RCMP are in the community with searchers. A drone and police dog are participating in the search, and personnel from the Office of the Fire Commissioner are helping in the search for Johnson. And we'll take you to a big birthday party with family and friends at West Park Manor in Winnipeg yesterday. 6 residents there are 100 years or older this year. We'll have more coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
It's time to get into this weather forecast. And I don't know, Abby, I thought this, earlier this week we were all talking about above normal conditions and temperatures and how it didn't feel like fall. Is it just me, or does it feel a slight bit more like fall today?
Yes, it's feeling like fall today. And in the last hour, most of the regions are actually dropping. They're not climbing. So I will tell you that's the current condition out there. Cloudy in the south. However, we see clearing later in the day. We're going to be reaching highs of 22 in Winnipeg and Morris. What rainy conditions is what we will see mainly in the northern part of the province with cooler temperatures. Currently, Winnipeg 16 degrees. We are starting off cloudy. This will clear off as we get into the day. It will be breezy, and then that would ease off by the noon period. We should be seeing highs around 22 for the city. And then tonight, more clouds roll in and a few showers. In other regions, it's cloudy and rainy conditions in the northern province, in the northern part of the province. Thompson at 16 with light rain showers at this time, and Churchill mostly cloudy. Some rain will come in later. Down south, it's already clear in Brandon and in Dauphin, while down south Gimli all the way to Steinbach and Morris, we're seeing cloudy conditions with temperatures hovering near 15 degrees. But right now, 16 in Winnipeg, and we will see a clear morning and a mix of sun and clouds.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, the commute. Have we heard anything from anyone?
You know what? Nothing at all. It's been actually very smooth so far, but as I sometimes say, there's at least always one stalled car in Winnipeg, is always my theory. So if you see it, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, whether you're walking, biking, driving. Would love to hear from you. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, there was a lovely local gathering and book launch last night at McNally Robinson as another local author put forward a new piece of work. I posed this question moments ago, but do you remember going to your first cultural event? Those experiences can sometimes be scary, but also exciting, especially for kids, for young people. A new children's book explores that concept. It's about a young Anishinaabe boy dancing at his very first powwow. Martha Troyan is the author behind it. The book, it is called It's Powwow Time. And Martha's in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
How'd your launch go last night?
I think it went well. I hope it went well.
Was it exciting? I always ask authors if it feels like you're kind of officially like birthing a baby or something.
Yeah, that's how I was describing it too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why did you write the book in the first place? What drew you to write this?
Well, I actually wanted to always write books since 2013. But I worked as a journalist and I was just so busy with my career. And so I finally wrote the book in September 2020.
What's the inspiration behind the book? Are we actually seeing your son in this?
Yes, that's true. So he definitely inspired me, and this is just like a culmination of experiences over the years with my son at powwows. And it was like just watching him as a parent, as a mom, seeing my son learning how to dance, and just like taking him to powwows over the years. And so it was just like you have these, as a parent, like you have these kind of like memories and moments of your child kind of like burned in your head. And like I just had like all these like vivid scenes. And I just it just came out one morning. I had the house to myself, and I just poured out of me this story. And so, yeah.
Why was it important that a powwow was part of your family's life?
Well, I mean, it was very important. We knew that we wanted to raise our son with cultural traditions and hunting and, just having a name. And because, as you know, the history of Indigenous people in this country and all across North America, I mean, these are the very things that were taken away. And it took a very long time for us to freely and without any punishment to practice these traditions. And so today you see a lot of young people now doing that, such as my son and everyone else, just practicing powwowing and singing and moose hide tanning and land-based education programs across the country. It's everywhere now.
This is such a beautiful book too. I mean, as with a lot of children's book, the colors are so vibrant. The illustrations are gorgeous, and everything down to the little details in the picture. The way the flowers sort of draw on almost to me, it looks like Métis tradition. Just to describe it for the radio audience, the types of florals and all the colors and the way the dancers' regalia looks. Do you want to share something from its powwow time? Do a bit of a reading, Martha?
Sure, I can do
great.
that.
I would love that.
Okay, great. Okay, so the birds are twittering, eggs and bacon are popping. Pop, crack, pop. Pop, crack, pop. Come on, my boy, we have to get moving. Benishi blinks to the sound of music coming from the kitchen. Thump, thump, thump. Way-ah, hey-ah, ya. Way-ah, hey-ah, ya. The sun rays are poking, tall grass is swaying, the country roads are bumping. Bump, bump, bump. Bump, bump, bump. Come on, sunshine, it's powwow time.
Love that. What was your first powwow like?
So I grew up in a city, and I didn't necessarily experience a powwow. I mean, at a very young age that I can't recall. Instead, what my mom did is we would go to the basement of a friendship center and do Indigenous crafts with other Indigenous children. I think that's what a lot of urban Indigenous people did back in the day. And it wasn't until my late teens, early 20s, actually late teens, when I started to do ceremonies and meeting with Daywin elders, and I was practicing my culture a lot then.
It's a different experience.
Yeah, it was totally different experience. And even with my mom, right? She went to several residential schools of Canada's Indian residential schools. So she was not able to do these things as a child. And, that's what I mean. This book to me is kind of like a generational book. And it just speaks to the different experiences that in some Indigenous families, what we may have experienced.
It's sort of, tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but for me, when I look at this, just as an ally, obviously I'm not Indigenous, but the thought that in even your own family, that going from, not being able to sell, and this is so many Manitoba families across the country, not being able to, the grandmothers, great-grandmothers and great-grandfathers, not being able to even speak the language, show the culture, celebrate. And then here you are with this children's book for families to pick up and just not normalize, celebrate, have the right kids book to read to your child. Have you talked to parents about what this means to them? I mean, you must be incredibly proud of this kids book.
I am, and I think that this book also just kind of show for the people that are not familiar with powwows as well. If you've never gone to a powwow from morning or from grand entry, which is early afternoon till night, this is what I was trying to kind of depict that in this book. To the words, obviously Holly Pitchett, the illustrator, she did an amazing job with the illustrations, but it's kind of gives you a little bit of that taste and just that introduction to a powwow. So I hope I answered your question.
You did answer my question, yeah. And I think that a lot of people that haven't been to a powwow, as you said, it's kind of so many of these scenes are familiar to all powwows, because I myself have been to a number of different powwows. What if someone's never been and they're not sure if they can go? Maybe they just never gone. Maybe they are living urban, like you said, and they're not sure. Where do you start? Can you just pick a powwow? What's the cultural understanding you have to have if you're going to want to attend?
Yeah, I think like well, powwows are open to everybody. They can attend them. And, there are some in the city and there also are some outside of a city as well. But there's always because of social media, we have a list of all the powwows that take place in this province. In every province, I think there's a lot of social media pages dedicated to this. And yeah, I mean, that you do see, I think that, I hope that even if non-Indigenous people are feeling like kind of reluctant in going or they don't know if they should go, surely I hope that they can access, material online to know that it's okay to go out to these things, and also, of course, to always respect the protocols and whatever territory that you're on. And so that's what we always do as well as Anishinaabe people. Like we've done a lot of traveling and we go to different powwows in different provinces and states, and we always have to respect who lives there.
Know where you are, whose land are you on?
Exactly.
Last question for you, Martha. National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, of course, coming up week from Monday. When it comes to embracing culture, what do you hope that young kids know about the National Day for TRC?
Oh, I think that I think there's a lot of children that know a lot of things today and are practicing, like, for instance, Orange Shirt Day. I think that one thing that I would like to say, though, is that I know that the schools are doing a lot of work inside, and I am totally grateful for that. I see that, I see that today happening. But I think that there are some families there that would like to also practice, like, traditional hunting or go to ceremonies with their children and as an entire family and travel to these different places. And I think sometimes Western, education systems kind of need to take those traditions into their just to be able to accommodate Indigenous families that may want to do these things, and to not just to accommodate the child as well when they come back to a school. I think to me that's also reconciliation, and I just wish that the education systems would make room for that.
Thank you so much for coming in. Congratulations on your beautiful book. Look at this beautiful book. Martha Troyan, people can find her book. It's out now. Appreciate having you in studio.
Thank you so much.
This is the morning after her book launch, so special stars for Martha for being in studio with us. Anishinaabe author and award-winning journalist. You can get its Powwow Time everywhere books are sold.
Taken by the lightning, one in a million, one in a million. She found a higher calling, one in a million. She had a pipe dream, living in a song till it hit mainstream. FM radio and a cover of a magazine.
It's cool new music from Winnipeg's Madeline Roger. Comes on the heels of her sophomore album called Nerve. This tune is with the Toronto String Quartet, the Fretless. This tune's called Pipe Dream, if you want to check it out. Well, let's turn our attention to morning sports, where it is not a dream. It is an unbelievable achievement. Scott Regehr, can we please talk about Ohtani? Amazing stuff in baseball.
Sorry, I jumped into that play-by-play on you, Marcy,
Yeah,
but
please, yes.
I feel discombobulated by what I witnessed last night. I watched this game with Ohtani and the Dodgers, well, throttling the Marlins in Miami. You just heard it called the greatest game in baseball history. That's not just bombast. So here's Ohtani's stat line. He went 6 for 6, had 3 home runs, 10 runs batted in, and 2 stolen bases for good measure. That is bonkers. He becomes the first ever member of the 50-50 club for 50 homers and 50 steals in a season, which has left one of his teammates, Mookie Betts, flabbergasted.
He was just feeling good and feeling sexy and just knew, like, I'm about to do this today. I'm really just a fan watching it just like y'all are, you know. I just happen to have the closest seat, you know. So all the feelings, I don't even know what feelings and emotions I have. It's just unexplainable witnessing history like that.
For me anyway, this performance was as heartwarming, Marcy, as it was inexplicable. Remember, before the season started, Ohtani had $17 million stolen from him by his childhood friend and interpreter. He was also told by his doctors he couldn't do what he loves doing best in the sport, and that's pitch this season because of injuries. And yet there he was after the game last night, humble as any superstar we've witnessed, focusing on the respect he has for those history makers in baseball that came before him. None of them have done what he did last night. And best of all, and sorry to Blue Jays fans for this, it came in the same game where the Dodgers clinched a playoff spot. Incredible.
So cool.
I still can't believe it.
Yeah, if you don't watch baseball and you're thinking you might want to watch baseball, watch the postseason. Start watching baseball now. You'll do yourself well.
Are we going to see the Dodgers against the Yankees?
I don't know.
Could you imagine? Talk about good for the sport.
Last night there was some of the sports stations I was watching were analyzing whether or not Ohtani could actually go in and do like pitch. Like maybe.
Well, exactly. They asked him, will you come in and pitch as a reliever like we saw at the World Baseball Classic where he helped Japan win the thing, right?
He's amazing. Well, for some great news, from some great news to some not great news, what is with the curse of the quarterbacks with our Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Getting unfortunate news yesterday on player front as they continue to prep for Saturday's matchup against the Elks.
Yeah, Adam Bighill, the veteran linebacker, posted on social media yesterday he needs surgery on his knee. He's done for the year. Head coach Mike O'Shea was asked what losing Bighill means.
Guys like Adam, I mean, there's lots of guys on every team that are basically irreplaceable, and you just make sure that the guys that are playing in those spots don't try to be someone they're not. Just be themselves, you know. They're here for a reason. They can play football. They can help us win football games, and I think they should be happy about being their type of player, not trying to be someone else.
That person stepping in is Shane Gauthier. As for Bighill, he turns 36 next month. Some are questioning whether this could be the end of his great career. If so, he put on social media last night, this is not the end of number 4 by any means, but it does mean one step at a time. Attacking rehab is next.
That on top of the quarterback issue is crazy.
Yeah.
All right, and day 1 of training camp is now done for the Jets. What are your main takeaways here?
Not to look too closely at forward line combinations. Head coach Scott Arniel telling reporters he mainly kept his veterans together yesterday as a function of familiarity, given the first preseason game goes tomorrow. That's in Edmonton. One forward missing from the group, Cole Perfetti, the young winger, still without a contract and thus not in camp, something we'll continue to follow.
Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Take care.
You too.
That's Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. I'm Marcy Marcusa here on CBC's Information Radio, the morning show on Friday here. It is mostly cloudy outside. The commute cooperating so far, 788-3093 if you do need to report anything in traffic. And coming up, new rules coming to protect teens on Instagram. What do you need to know in your household? We'll find out after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's partly cloudy and 15 at the Forks. The clouds will clear up this morning, and we're looking at a high of 22. The search continues this morning for a missing 6-year-old boy in Shamattawa First Nation. Johnson Redhead went to a breakfast program at the school in the northeastern Manitoba First Nation Wednesday morning, but he didn't show up in class. RCMP Sergeant Paul Manaig says the RCMP is part of the search party.
We're working with the community. Like I say, it's tough for them, so we're trying to do our best to provide that assistance. We've got a police dog services coming. We've got a drone here now that's going to help us.
The RCMP search and rescue team, along with personnel from the Office of the Fire Commissioner, are helping with the search for Johnson. Manaig says around 50 to 100 volunteers from the community also helped out yesterday. 8 members of the Canadian Rangers are helping with the search. Lieutenant Colonel Vincent Couturier is commanding officer with the 4th Canadian Ranger Patrol Group. He says the RCMP has asked them to assist with the search efforts. He says Shamattawa's remote location will be the challenge.
The Canadian Ranger Patrol that is on site is from that community, so I can assume that they are concerned.
Couturier says the 8 rangers are from Shamattawa and started the search efforts on Wednesday. 4 members of the Winnipeg Volunteer Search and Rescue arrived in Shamattawa on Thursday. Manitoba is slated to unveil a new energy policy today. The province faces growing demand for electricity. Quebec unveiled its own strategy to expand generating capacity last year and pegged the cost at $185 billion. Bruce Laurie is the president of the Ivy Foundation, which spends its money on advancing a net zero economy. He says Manitoba needs something more specific.
The Quebec report was very impressive and really the only and first in Canada that basically puts real numbers on paper in terms of quantities of new power and quantities of transmission lines, as well as the financing required to do it. I mean, Manitoba should be able to come up with something comparable.
An excerpt of the new Manitoba energy policy acknowledges the province won't be able to do away with oil and gas in the short term. Premier Wab Kinew has set a goal for the province to be carbon neutral by 2050. A British luxury department store, Harrods, is being sued by 37 women who are accusing the store's former owner of sexual assault or rape. The allegations against Mohammed Al-Fayed are being made by former employees, including 3 Canadians. One of the lawyers representing the women is Maria Molla.
One woman was sexually assaulted, and she had the bravery and courage to raise this. On the same day of making this written complaint, the head of security contacted her and said, "You are a girl, alone, in London. Someone could jump out the bushes at you, or you could have a sudden accident."
Mohammed Al-Fayed was the father of Princess Diana's partner, Dodi. The senior Al-Fayed died last year. Many of his accusers say they weren't comfortable coming forward while he was still alive. An Indigenous business owner has advice for companies to mark Manitoba's first official Orange Shirt Day. September 30th is now a statutory holiday in the province. Michelle Cameron owns INAC, the Indigenous Nations apparel company at Polo Park. She says orange shirt business is brisk, and so are questions from other business owners on how to mark the day.
Have a huddle in the morning and talk about what it means. We do the same thing within our company. We have a lot of different ethnicities within our company, so we all take time and we talk about what it means to us as Indigenous people, and we go around and have a sharing circle within our company.
Cameron says a walk in the community is another way employees can connect with the significance of remembering the harm caused by residential schools. And a Winnipeg artist says online sellers are using her designs without her permission for orange shirt t-shirts. Jackie Travers says she's noticed this happening, especially in the lead up to the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. Travers says she recently noticed 2 sellers on Facebook putting her designs on orange t-shirts.
They're taking multiple images, and I've been watermarking my work, but they remove my name and they take the visuals, right? And this latest image, I don't think they removed the name, but they put something over top of my name.
Travers believes most of the sellers are companies based in the U.S. CBC has reached out to the sellers in question, but did not receive a response as of last night. And a birthday party like no other.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
6 residents at West Park Manor in Winnipeg are 100 or older this year. Family and friends gathered to honor them yesterday. Ethel Goodall is 101 years old. She says it's important to be honest and good and do the best you can at whatever you're trying.
Well, I've done a few things. I've been, been around, done a lot of traveling and whatnot. So I've had a very good life. There's been ups and downs, as everyone has.
The centenarians got well wishes from the city and other dignitaries. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Megan, catch us in with our CBC News this morning, filling in for Heather Wells. Now, before we get to weather and traffic, I want to show you this book. If you're watching on YouTube, you're about to see how beautiful this is. Right before 7:30, we interviewed Martha Troyan, the author of It's Powwow Time. There's that book. How gorgeous is that? It tells the experience of a young boy's first experience dancing at a powwow. So all the things, the driving down the road, the time to dance, the mini donuts, as she writes in her book, raining from the sky, all the family and the fun and the regalia. So what we want to do, because Martha left 2 books behind, we have 2 beautiful copies of this kid's book. We want to ask you to call the listener line and share with us your favorite powwow memory. Your favorite powwow memory. Could be yours, could be your child's, could be just your favorite powwow memory. No parameters around it. Let us know. 788-3205. And you can only enter to win the books by calling. So please call and share those memories with us on the listener line, 788-3205. And what we'll do is we'll play some calls, so get your calls on the air. We'll share together these memories on this beautiful Friday morning. And then we will award the books at the end of the show. And we'll make a random draw from all the calls. So if you want to enter to win these copy of the books, we have 2 of them to give away. Call us and we'll play your calls. 204-788-3205. Your favorite powwow memories. Well, let's get into what's going on. It is the last Friday of summer, Abby.
Cloudy skies, that will be clearing this morning, and showers. That's the forecast across the province today, with temperatures ranging from 10 in the north all the way to 22 in the south. Winnipeg sitting at 15 and partly cloudy. We should expect the skies to clear up as we get into the morning period, and then some breezy conditions will be easing as we get into the noon period. We'll see highs near 22. Brandon is sunny at this time at 9 degrees. You get to a high of 19. Some light breezy conditions you're seeing, and then showers and possible thunderstorms later in the forecast. Thompson sitting at 15 with light breeze. Expect more rain in the forecast. Breezy conditions will come with that. Temperatures will drop to 12 degrees. There's a slim chance of showers overnight still. Churchill 13 and foggy at this time. Forecast calls for rain and possible thunderstorms with breezy conditions this afternoon. High 19. Dauphin is sitting at 11 with cloudy conditions expected to clear up, and then you'd see a high of 21. Gimli, good morning to you. You are cloudy at 15 degrees. For the Interlake region today, we should see some clear skies, breezy west winds, high 21. In Steinbach, it is 14 and cloudy. We'll see some clear skies also this morning. The highs would get to 21 with some breezy conditions easing around the noon period. In Morris, it is also cloudy at 13. The forecast for the Pembina Valley region calls for some sunny conditions, breezy winds, high 22, and then tonight some clouds will roll in and showers will definitely be felt. Across, once again in Winnipeg, it is we're seeing partly cloudy conditions, and the skies will clear up as we get deeper into the morning period, and then that breezy condition I mentioned will be easing up near the noon period and would reach highs of 22. Right now, it is 15 in Winnipeg.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk.
Really, so far, been a really quiet commute. Haven't heard much on the commuter line. But if you're out there, you're walking your bike and you're driving, you see something going on, give me a call on the commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey. Up next on the show, Instagram is rolling out, as I've been mentioning, new accounts. These accounts are targeting users under the age of 18. So the new accounts feature feature enhanced privacy and parental controls. The overhaul aims to improve online safety and address concerns about the negative effects of social media. And Canadian teens are among the first in the world to access these accounts. Technology consultant Avery Swartz joined me to explain.
Good morning.
So, what is new about these teen accounts?
Okay, so if you're already on a teen account or if you're under 18 and you're on Instagram, you're going to be moved to a teen account. Basically, what's going to change starting now is that accounts are going to be private by default. They're not going to be available to the general public. Also, lots of messaging restrictions. Teens will not be able to message people that they don't follow or are already connected to. Also, they won't be able to be tagged or mentioned by people that they don't follow in other posts. And another big one is time limitations. So first of all, there's going to be something called sleep mode, which is kind of like a do not disturb at night between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. that goes on by default. Also, after teens have been on the app for an hour every day, depending on how the parental settings are put in place, that teen will either be nudged to leave the app and go do something else after an hour, or they'll be fully blocked from being able to use the app any longer after an hour every day.
Now, even Meta, the owner of Instagram, has acknowledged that some kids are just going to lie about their ages and then avoid everything altogether, these restrictions. How's the platform going to verify the age of a younger user?
So when you sign up for an Instagram account now, you do have to verify your age. And usually that's done through providing ID. The problem is a lot of teens don't have ID. So instead, they're using something, get this, it's called facial age estimation technology. It's basically artificial intelligence. What a teen would do is use, it's kind of like doing a live selfie, holding up their face to the screen. It is anonymous technology that will scan their face and do an AI-powered estimation of their age to try and determine if they are a teen or if they're over 18. Also, they're going to use AI to kind of scan and try and find and remove underage accounts. So some pretty innovative but also controversial technology there.
There's also specific, I understand, specific user guidelines that will be kicking in. If your age is 13 to 15, you can't change controls without parental permission. At 16 and 17, you can. That's very specific, right?
Yes, it is. And you nailed it there with that one. So if you're 13, 14, or 15, you cannot make any changes to any of these defaults without getting parental permission inside the app. So it means that your teen account is linked to a parent's account. Your parent goes into their settings to control your account. If you're 16 or 17, same thing. All of these defaults are on by default, but you can go in and manually change some of these settings.
And how are they going to know who's changing what?
Well, I mean, it comes down to, again, how old they think you are based on that age verification. So, again, the devil's in the details with this stuff. And if there's one thing we all know about teenagers is that they're very good at finding sneaky ways to circumvent settings. So it'll be interesting to see how this actually holds up.
How do the features that we're talking about compare with other social media platform safety features for younger users?
So they are more stringent than other teen accounts on other platforms. So the other two really popular platforms for teens are TikTok and Snapchat. So on TikTok, there is this same idea of the 1 hour screen time limit, and it can be bypassed with a code from parents. So that can, again, pretty much the exact same thing. After an hour, it'll either nudge you or block you. On Snapchat, they don't have a time limit, but they do have parental controls that can make it so that teens cannot be contacted by just anyone. They can only be contacted by people that have their phone number, and location sharing is turned off by default on Snapchat.
What do you think the limitations are going to be of these new teen accounts? We've already addressed some of this, but what are your thoughts on the bigger question?
I mean, we've got to look at the context that this is happening in, right? Especially in America, where there is the Kids Online Safety Act that really quickly made it through the Senate, but now it's kind of stalled in the House. If that bill makes it through, it basically would have forced Meta, the parent company of Instagram, to make these kinds of changes. Also in the U.S., the Surgeon General has suggested that social media should have a warning label on it, similar to the warning label on cigarettes. And 42 attorneys general, or attorney generals, I don't know how you would put that in plural, but 42 of them have said that they agree with that. You know, here in Canada, we have many provinces banning cell phone use in schools. In Ontario, we have school boards that are suing social media companies. Like, this is really in a climate where people are recognizing and trying to take action against the harms that social media can cause children. So releasing, I'm never going to criticize anything that tries to make a platform safer, but some people do criticize this as saying that it is taking the responsibility of the safety from the tech giant and basically just downloading it to parents that are already, quite busy, that have their own issues with technology. Putting the control in their hands is a good thing, but also it puts the responsibility of the control into their hands.
What would responsibility, though, at the greater level actually look like? I mean, they would have to literally just shut down accounts, period. And then that would cause a bigger uproar, I would guess, in terms of a company, taking ownership over personal decisions. It's the world we live in, right? That's the gray area.
Absolutely. And, and this comes down to, what is the legislation around children's use online? There's a reason why you aren't supposed to have a social media account, period, until the age of 13. And that's because of a piece of legislation that says that tech companies cannot be collecting any information of people under the age of 13. Like, that 13 wasn't just a random number. That's a number that came from legislation. So again, this is the thing of, without there being legislation that says, if you're between the ages of 13 and 18, it's a delicate balance, right?
Thank you very much for walking us through this. Obviously, parents are going to be weighing in and forming their own thoughts on whether or not it'll be a game changer for their families. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much.
That's my conversation, which happened actually earlier this week with Avery Swartz, who's a technology consultant, talking about new rules coming for Instagram teen accounts.
Orange is not simply a color. It's an acknowledgement of truth, a shade of support, a step towards reconciliation. Join residential school survivors and allies September 30 at the Wasay Healing Center's Orange Shirt Day Walk for Survivors and Powwow, proudly sponsored by CBC. Walk starts at 11 a.m. at the Forks. Powwow is at 1 p.m. at the RBC Convention Center. Support truth. Step into reconciliation. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
Remember, we're giving away this book. It's powwow time. Martha Troyan was just on the show. She launched it last night in Winnipeg. So if you want to win the book, we have 2 of them to give away. Call our listener line. What's your favorite powwow memory is what we're asking. And we'll get those stories on the air and we'll announce a winner by the end of the show. Right now it is 13 minutes to 8 o'clock and still ahead after 8.
What would you do if you were shot in the face and left to die? I always wanted to understand more about where does hate come from and why. What can we do to get beyond that destructive anger that leads to violence and in many cases to death?
They were celebrating the fact that the rally was over. That's when he drove his car into the crowd.
I remember those words vividly. F you, Asian, you don't belong here.
And she said, Chris, your mom got shot.
A person does not wake up one day and think, I'm gonna go out and kill a bunch of people for whatever. A journey has brought them to that place.
My phone kept pinging, and you still never imagined that.
It's a wake-up call.
Peace and forgiveness are out there. Let's go find it.
After 8 o'clock on Information Radio, in the days following 9/11, he was shot in the face by a white supremacist in a brutal hate crime. We're going to hear from author and documentary filmmaker Boan. He's in Winnipeg. He will be in studio. He's screening his documentary he co-produced called Pain and Peace in Winnipeg tonight, and he's going to join us. And obviously we were hearing clips there from Pain and Peace, so we'll talk more about the work as he joins us in studio. So Boan live in studio after 8. It is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock right now. It's cloudy and 17 degrees. Our high today is 22. It's going to be very windy this afternoon. Well, next on the show, let's build on a story that you may have been hearing in the news today. A First Nations artist is frustrated to see posts on social media showing people wearing orange shirts with designs of her artwork on them. Jackie Travers claims her work is being stolen and sold without her permission to mark National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which of course is coming up a week from Monday on September 30th. She says it's an ongoing problem, not just with her, but with other artists, and it needs to stop. Jackie joins us this morning via Zoom. Hi there, Jackie.
Good morning.
Tell me how long this has been going on for. I mean, I remember doing a story on CBC a number of years ago. What are you hearing from other artists?
It's been happening for quite some time, especially over the past 4 years. But my work has been stolen, I would say about 12 years now, my one image, and it's been stolen by multiple places and used on everything from mugs to hoodies to t-shirts. I think I have about maybe a dozen stolen images floating around out there.
When did you first notice this year, again, leading up to September 30th, there's your art on things that, you know, aren't profiting you or benefiting you as the creator of this?
People send me pictures all the time and saying, oh, is this yours? I think, you know, this company is using it or whatever. So I got sent a picture and it was Lily Gladstone, the actress, holding up one of my shirts. And I'm like, wow, that's bad. They're even using celebrities now to try and sell these t-shirts. And yeah, that was my art that was on the t-shirt. And I decided to share that picture. That was probably about a month ago. And I couldn't find the page that originally it was posted to. And then just the other day, I got another picture, and it was, again, Lily Gladstone holding up a different design. And it was my artwork again. And I was like, wow, they altered my image, but you can still tell it's mine. But they took my watermark out and put Every Child Matters in there. And I was like, oh, they're really getting brave with these images, you know, taking them for their own and altering them now.
For people listening, can you describe the image that's, and how you know it's yours? Because, you know, there's a certain way that obviously you've created it. Can you describe for the radio audience just an example of one of your images that was stolen?
This one was called Prayers Across the Nation, and it's of a turtle. And it's the turtle is holding a eagle feather and sweetgrass, and there's like smoke coming around all around the outside part of the turtle, and on the inside were my Ojibwe florals on the turtle shell. So some components were taken out of there and other stuff was added in. Like the sweetgrass, they used it and they made a circle. So it's just my image repeated over and over again to make up that circle. And then they put where the florals are, they put the Every Child Matters words inside there with little handprints.
Is there any legal recourse you can take if the image is straight taken, or if you know that they've altered it? Or legally, will they say, well, it's altered, so it's not the same image? Like, what are the rules that protect your art?
Well, this is the first time I've seen the images being altered. Like, previously they've just taken the image and used the image altogether. Now they're changing things a bit. I'm not sure if they put that circle over my artwork because they couldn't remove my watermark.
Got it.
That could be one of the reasons. But no, there's nothing really I could do because I've been dealing with this now for, I would have to say, about 5 years. And there used to be a lady named Lucinda Turner, but she's passed now. this lady used to fight for Indigenous artists all across Canada, and she would take care of stuff like that, and she was really on top of it, and she would send cease and desist letters to companies all the time, and she would get her work removed, but it would pop up again the next day somewhere else. So it's just like another artist described it as whack-a-mole, it just keeps happening. So
When we're
I
talking about who is using the images, these are. Can you describe some of the sellers and companies that are taking your art where that you've noticed?
well, some of the sites like they'll use
Like, are they big platforms? Or where are you seeing it being sold?
yeah, it's mostly on Facebook, and they do have huge followings. Some of them have like over 100,000 followers, and um like you could tell that it's not a legitimate Indigenous site because just the language they're using, and they're posting only popular things that are happening in, I guess, I on Facebook, on social media,
So is it
and
like a company, Jackie, pops up around, say, September 30th, which is coming up, and it's created for the purpose of selling merchandise and capitalizing on this? It's not like you
yeah,
have an established big company taking the art and selling your work. These are companies that are popping up and down.
yeah, it happens every year, end of August, around September, and they're just around to make a quick buck off the t-shirts, and
I,
then they're gone for the next year.
I have to ask you in our last minute here how we can, all of us listening at Manitobans, if they are going to think about shopping for Orange Shirt Day, of course, coming up for TRC Day, how can they make sure they're supporting legitimate Indigenous artists? You've mentioned the watermark, for example. How can people make sure they're buying the real thing?
I would ask, like, who's the artist? If they can't name the artist, then they stole that work, right? Where do the funds go from my purchase? Like, is anything going to the Orange T-shirt Society or Indian Residential School survivors? And most of the times these places, well, I would say 100% of the time, they're not donating because they don't know the cause. They just know it's a popular thing. I don't even think they really understand that this is real to Indigenous people, and this happened to the children of residential school. It's just purely for profit.
Thank you.
So they probably won't be able to answer those questions.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'm sorry this continues to happen to you in your work. Appreciate having you with us via Zoom.
Thank you very much.
That is Jackie Travers, Winnipeg-based First Nations artist, talking about the challenges around Orange Shirt Day and some of her images, which are being sold on T-shirts, but they're not actually sanctioned by her. You can have a look and read the story, by the way, at how big this problem is becoming in our country. cbc.ca/Manitoba to read more. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Heather Wells is off today, but we have Megan Ketchison in with our headlines next.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's new energy policy acknowledges that oil and gas won't be phased out as energy sources anytime soon. The province is slated to release a policy today that states fossil fuels will remain in use until cleaner sources of energy are found to be more plentiful. And as many as 100 people are searching for a little boy who is missing in Shamattawa. Johnson Redhead went to a breakfast program at the school in the northeastern Manitoba First Nation on Wednesday morning, and he didn't show up to class. And we'll have more coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Traffic's been pretty good this morning. 788-3093 if you need to update anything for us. Our high in Winnipeg today is 22. We should have some clearing, and then it's going to be a little bit windy today in the forecast. We do have rain returning, but not until overnight. Right now it's partly cloudy and 15 degrees in Winnipeg. Pardon me, we lost a few degrees, and I think this hour I still been saying 17, but that's just wishful thinking. Still ahead after 8 o'clock, he challenges us with these words, quote, "Peace and forgiveness are out there. Let's go find it." End quote. Filmmaker Rice Bouyan is going to be in studio with his incredible story of surviving being shot in the face by a white supremacist. It happened after 9/11. He has a documentary out right now he co-produced. It's called Pain and Peace. It screens in Winnipeg tonight. Stay tuned for the interview after 8.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Needless to say, when you go through a breakup, you get perspective. Just ask Omar Apollo. He'll be here to tell you about making what some are calling the greatest breakup album of the year. It's called God Said No, and what he had to go through in order to make it.
So don't just dispose of me.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
A growing number of parents are using apps and AirTags to track where their children are, even what those children are doing. Experts say that can threaten their autonomy, but some parents say it's actually giving their kids more freedom. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Britain is having a Me Too moment.
This case combines some of the most horrific elements of the cases involving Jimmy Savile, Jeffrey Epstein, and Harvey Weinstein.
That, one of the lawyers representing a group of women, including 3 Canadians who accused Mohammed Al Fayed of sexual assault and rape. Al Fayed was the father of Princess Diana's partner, Dodi, and he owned the British luxury department store Harrods, which is now being sued in a civil case. The CBC's Crystal Gamansing is in London, where Al Fayed's accusers spoke. Crystal, take us through the allegations being brought forward.
The allegations are pretty disturbing. We heard from one victim as well as 4 different lawyers representing 37 former employees really from around the world. And they talked about systematic grooming, really, how women who were selected to be promoted and work directly with Mohammed Al Fayed, they were then regularly followed. They were constantly under surveillance. They even talked about being subjected to medical exams before they were promoted. Natasha started working at Harrods, a world-famous store, when she was very young. But listen to what she had to say about what it was actually like working for Al Fayed.
But then these private meetings turned into more. A forced kiss. His hands gripping your face to his lips, or pulling you down on his lap, where his hands were free to explore any part of your body that he wished.
Harrods does say it is appalled by the allegations of abuse by Mohammed Al Fayed. He, of course, owned the department store up until 2010. And they are also, however, saying that there are mechanisms in place for anyone who was harmed during their time, and that those mechanisms have been in place since 2023.
A high-profile case, to be sure, Crystal, with a high-profile legal team. Tell us more about who they are.
One of the members that was here today was Gloria Allred. Of course, she is known as one of the world's leading lawyers in terms of women's rights. She talked about how this case is yet another one of high-profile, powerful men abusing his powers and the system around him allowing it to happen.
Crystal Gamansing in London. Thanks, Crystal.
You're welcome.
The United Nations Security Council is meeting today to address the growing fear of war between Israel and Hezbollah. It comes as Hezbollah renews its attacks on northern Israel. That sound believed to be Hezbollah rockets fired from southern Lebanon. The militant group says it launched more than 140 today. The assault follows heavy bombardment of Hezbollah targets by Israeli fighter jets. Abby Kugadasan reports.
In some of the most intense bombings since October 7th, the Israeli military says it has hit more than 100 Hezbollah targets, including rocket launchers inside Lebanon. Anshel Pfeffer is an Israeli journalist.
What happened overnight seems to be a couple of clicks on the dial towards an all-out war.
These strikes followed twin attacks across Lebanon earlier this week, targeting pagers and walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah members. Dozens of people were killed and thousands were injured, including civilians. Across Lebanon, deep concern about what could come next. Sally Abu Al-Jud is a journalist there.
They're scared. People were scared also to use their devices after what happened.
Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah has vowed retaliation against Israel, but did not provide further details. Israel has not commented on the explosions, but it is widely believed it is behind the complex operation. In a clear sign that some of the IDF's focus is shifting, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant spoke of a new phase in the war. A new goal, too, to ensure that more than 60,000 Israelis can return home near the northern border with Lebanon. Some IDF troops are now being diverted there.
What we're hearing is that the plan is for a very limited incursion.
Travers says that hasn't been confirmed, but a recent poll shows this is what 52% of Jewish Israelis want, a broad-scale war in Lebanon. Western leaders in Washington and London are urging restraint, and the UN Security Council is holding an emergency session today. Abby Cuevas in CBC News, Berlin.
We're getting a better sense of the toll the war in Ukraine has taken on Russia, the number of those killed, and who they were. Dominic Velitis is in Riga, Latvia, with the details.
The new data shows more than 70,000 Russians have now died on the front line in Ukraine. And for the first time, it's civilians who signed up for the armed forces making up the majority. Previously, inmates from Russian jails who were initially offered pardons in exchange for service were in first place, with most of them dying in the battle for Bakhmut. The data, which has been collated and analysed by the BBC and Mediazona, was sourced from media reports and social networks, and it shows how the profile of Russian volunteers dying on the front line is now changing. Most are in their 40s and 50s, but around 250 were in their 60s, with the oldest killed aged 71. The majority of those signing up to fight in Ukraine came from small rural towns in parts of Russia where work is difficult to find and poorly paid. Dominic Velitis for CBC News in Riga, Latvia.
The CBC has obtained court documents laying out graphic details of alleged racism and sexism by a group of RCMP officers in BC. 3 members of the Coquitlam detachment are facing dismissal for their participation in a private chat group through the encrypted Signal messaging app. A search warrant obtained by the Force's Professional Standards Unit lays out the allegations against them. Jason Proctor reports.
In one private chat group conversation, a Mountie allegedly joked about tasering unarmed black people. In another, a different officer allegedly called a sexual assault victim dumb, adding a vile misogynistic slur. According to a search warrant obtained by CBC, a member of the Coquitlam RCMP who belonged to the group stepped forward to complain about what he called atrocious, racist and horrible behavior by his colleagues. Constable Sam Sodi complained they belittled Indigenous people, evoking racist stereotypes. And he also said one of the 3 officers now facing dismissal mocked a domestic assault victim. The 3 Mounties have been suspended since June 2021. A code of conduct hearing for the men was supposed to begin in Surrey on Monday, but has now been adjourned until next March, more than 4 years after Sodi first stepped forward. According to the warrant, the complaint also led to a review of thousands of messages the officers sent through the RCMP's own chat logs, finding evidence they engaged in frequently offensive usage of homophobic and racist slurs. The RCMP would not comment on the allegations while the Code of Conduct proceedings are unresolved. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
And finally, prosecutors call it, quote, one of the largest murder cases ever charged in Ontario. Today, Kenneth Law is set to appear in a courtroom. He's charged with murder and abetting suicide in connection with 14 deaths across the province. But as Thomas Dagler reports, Law is now also facing a civil lawsuit over a teenager's death. And a warning, the story contains talk of suicide.
It's not easy for Leonardo Bedoya and Maria Lopez to speak of their daughter Yesenia 2 years after their loss. But when they do, they describe the 18-year-old as an enchanting girl with an infectious smile. A recent high school grad from Aurora, Ontario, who dreamt of one day becoming a police officer. Her death is now at the center of a $2 million lawsuit recently filed by her parents, seeking damages from several doctors and Kenneth Law. The alleged poison seller is already facing criminal charges of first-degree murder and abetting suicide in connection with 14 deaths, including Yesenia's. Her parents accuse Law of selling their daughter what they describe as a suicide kit that Yesenia used to end her life amid a mental health crisis.
They have every right to pursue a civil
proceeding in parallel with the criminal proceeding.
York University law professor Suzanne Kyoto points out the standard of proof is higher for establishing criminal guilt than for civil liability. But
this is a really kind of cutting edge issue that it's going to be difficult to work out in the courts. I think
law has denied wrongdoing. In court today, a judge is expected to order him to stand trial on the criminal charges late next year. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. And a reminder, you can listen to us live every morning on the CBC News app. Just tap on the local icon. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
It is the last Friday of summer, Manitoba, and welcome to it. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This is CBC. All of us are remarking coming into our newsroom today that it feels just a little more like fall. Abby said in the last hour it's the first morning really where the temperature has fallen throughout the program. So right now we were at 15 degrees. We'll see if we're still there when we cover our forecast in a moment. This half hour on the program, we have a feature interview. In the days following 9/11, he was shot in the face by a white supremacist in a brutal hate crime. We're going to have on our program an interview with Boan, who is in our city to screen a documentary he co-produced. It's called Pain and Peace. He says peace is always the way forward. Peace and forgiveness. He's founder of the nonprofit World Without Hate, and he joins us in studio. Also this half hour, we're going to play some of your calls. We had an author on talking about It's Powwow Time, which is a brand new kids book. We asked you to call us with your powwow memories and stories, and we've got some calls to play. And we'll give away those books by the end of the show. If you still want to get in a powwow memory, a chance to win one of these kids books, we have two, as mentioned, to give away. You can call 788-3205. Right now, let's go to Megan Ketchison, who has our news headlines this morning. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning. Well, the search continues for a 6-year-old boy in Shamattawa First Nation who has been missing for more than a day. RCMP Sergeant Paul Maneg is in the community helping with the search. He says between 50 and 100 volunteers in the community helped with the search yesterday, and today a drone and police dog will be there as well. And a Winnipeg artist says online sellers are using her designs without her permission for orange shirt t-shirts. She believes most of these sellers are companies based in the United States. And we'll have more coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Megan.
Thank you.
Please do look at the picture of that little boy on our website, by the way, if you can be of any type of assistance. It is 8:12 a.m. and Abby, we did lose another degree.
Yeah, the mercury dropped again by 1:14 in Winnipeg. Still cloudy outside. Cloudy start to Friday, though it's going to clear up and then we will see breezy conditions, and that should be calming down by the noon period. We'll then warm up to a high of 22 later today. We have a chance of showers late in the evening. In other regions, we're seeing cloudy and raining conditions still hanging out in the northern part of the province with cooler temperatures. Thompson at 15 and Churchill at 13. Light drizzle being felt in those regions. Brandon already seeing sunny conditions and Dauphin already seeing sunny conditions with temperatures around 9 and 11. And the other parts of the southern regions are seeing 15s and 13s from Gimli all the way down to Morris. So it's going to be more of like cloudy conditions, clearing up, and then we'll see a mix of clouds and sun and breezy conditions, and then it's going to calm down, and then we're going to warm up to 22.
Bit of everything.
Everything.
You need a roadmap for the weather today. Mm-hmm. All right, speaking of the road, how's the commute, Corey?
Big Friday vibes out there on the roads this morning. Very quiet. Haven't heard anything on the commuter line. But if you're out there, you see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, listen to any newscast or log on to just about any social media site and you'll see it, read it, and feel it. Hate and division are everywhere. In our city, the Winnipeg Police Service recorded a historic high in reported hate crimes last year. And in Toronto, one of Canada's biggest cities, police say that reports of hate incidents rose 64% since the war broke out between Israel and Hamas nearly a year ago. Now, in the days following 9/11, my next guest was shot in the face by a white supremacist in a brutal hate crime. But somehow, Rice Boan is still hopeful that peace in our time will prevail. He explores this in a documentary he co-produced called Pain and Peace.
What would you do if you were shot in the face and left to die? I always wanted to understand more about where does hate come from and why. What can we do to get beyond that destructive anger that leads to violence and in many cases to death?
They were celebrating the fact that the rally was over. That's when he drove his car into the crowd.
I remember those words vividly. F you, Asian, you don't belong here.
And she said, Chris, your mom got shot.
A person does not wake up one day and think, I'm gonna go out and kill a bunch of people for whatever. A journey has brought them to that place.
My phone kept pinging, and you still never imagined that.
It's a wake-up call.
Peace and forgiveness are out there. Let's go find it.
That's a clip from Pain and Peace, which is screening tonight at the University of Manitoba at the Robert Schultz Theatre. Filmmaker and survivor Rice Boan is with us in studio. He is also the founder of the nonprofit World Without Hate. He's a Bangladeshi American who now works as a technology professional in Dallas and a practicing Muslim. And as I mentioned, he's been in Winnipeg the last few days getting ready for tonight. Nice to have you with us.
It's great to be with you.
It's hard for many people to imagine that your mission is peace when such a thing happened to you. For those that don't know your story, what do you remember about the day that you were shot?
Well, let me take a step back. After graduating as a pilot officer from the Bangladesh Air Force Academy, I did not feel my destiny was there. And I left my country, my family, and for New York City to study computer science. And a few months before 9/11 terrorist attacks, I moved to Dallas. I was excited to see the Cowboys ranch bar with famous swinging doors, though I never did find one. Life was good, and my friend who invited me to Texas was in the gas station business and wanted me to help him to launch his newly opened gas station. So I was working there. 10 days after 9/11 terrorist attacks, I remember around noon, it was Friday, September 21st, 2001. Around noon, a customer walked in wearing bandana, sunglasses, baseball cap, and holding a double-barrel sort of shotgun. And from my previous robbery experience in the same gas station, I thought it would be another robbery. So I placed all the money on the counter and I begged him not to shoot me. But his gaze remained fixed and he mumbled a question, "Where are you from?" And I was panicked and I could say only, "Excuse me?" And before I could say anything more than that, he pulled the trigger from point blank range.
You would go on to not only forgive that man, but you led an international campaign trying to save him from death row. Why?
Well, because I did not believe killing is a solution. I did not believe that execution was the solution in this case. Hate cannot drive hate away. Violence cannot drive violence away. We need more peace, understanding, and inclusion in our world. And I saw him as a human being like me. And I strongly believed that if he was given a chance to live, to survive, he might be able to become a better human being. And I began to see him as a human being like me, not just a killer. And I went through this transformation when I went to Mecca for pilgrimage in 2009. And I remember that on my deathbed on the way to the hospital, I made a promise to God that if you give me a chance to live, I would help others. And once I did good in my own life and I was thriving, I thought about my promise. I'm doing good, but what have I done to keep my promise? And I realized that my would-be killer is sitting in death row waiting to die. And I thought I need to do something to save this human's life. so that he can also contribute to make this world a better place.
If I may ask you a personal question, I'm wondering if everybody in your own personal sphere was sort of understood where you were going with this, because they would have lived through someone that they loved, nearly losing your life, obviously at the hands of hate. You live with, I believe you have your sight's affected by this. You live with you live with this for the rest of your life, and financially it affected you. You're in the States, you have to pay for your health care. Was it hard for everyone to understand you going in this peaceful route of forgiveness?
Well, yes and no. As a result of this shooting incident, I lost vision in one eye, and I still carry more than 36 shotgun pellets on my face and skull. And I was able to forgive my attacker based on my Islamic faith teachings and also upbringing. So my family and my close friends, they were not surprised with this act. But people who did not know me, once I launched the campaign, many people who did not know me, they actually sent nasty emails. Those who have different kinds of thoughts and ideas about Muslim and Islam. I received some nasty emails that Islam does not preach mercy and forgiveness and compassion and understanding. So what you are doing is not the right thing. But I took it as an opportunity to educate those people. So I responded back to them with kindness and also with compassion. And I explained that what my faith taught me is not what you know. What I learned from my faith is exactly what I'm trying to do right now.
So much of this is, the threads of what we're talking about is in Pain and Peace in your documentary. So you co-produced this with multi-Emmy award-winning filmmaker Mark Feja, who spent 2.5 years, as you explained, gathering. You traveled across North America. You interviewed dozens of survivors, but also perpetrators of hate-fueled violence. What did the perpetrators' journey to hate have in common? What did you learn?
Well, what I learned was that every perpetrator was a victim once upon a time. There is a deep wound in their heart. They went through a journey which led them to embrace that kind of lifestyle. Hate is a disease, and we need to cure the disease without eliminating the patients. That's what I learned, that their bad behavior, their acts of violence or hate did not cancel their humanness. They are still human beings, and if you could see them as a human being and respond their hate with kindness and compassion and understanding, most likely we'll be able to get beyond our bitter experiences and also contribute to make this world a better place. So I did not see them as a monster or as a bad person. I tried to understand their life's journey, what led them to embrace that kind of lifestyle. And this documentary did a very good job sharing their story and also explaining what led them to become an extremist or a violent person.
And what stayed with you about the survivors like yourself that you interviewed, and what they shared in terms of Pain and Peace?
Well, they shared the life story, how this particular incident of hate-fueled violence changed their life forever. Losing a loved one is not an easy thing. It's something will never make you the same the way you were before the incident happened to you. And they also shared their journey of finding purpose and how they were able to find peace through their pain. And everybody went through a different journey. It's not the same journey everybody went through to find purpose and peace. And that was one of the focus of this documentary as well, to share that how people could find peace and forgiveness and purpose through pain.
With so much darkness in the world right now, and if you look politically, world leaders who are stoking division, and some with platforms and silos even now for their messages. So it just seems like there's, whereas before we would come together to try to solve things, it seems like there's agendas at play everywhere, and now with the social platforms to support them to further divide us. Where do you see hope? And how do you see a path forward given all of that, our current climate?
Well, I'm always a hopeful person. I'm a very optimist person. And it doesn't matter how much hate and violence or intolerance we see in the world, there is still hope. There is still, I see that there are a lot of good people in the world trying their best, going above and beyond to make our society more compassionate, empathetic, understanding, and inclusive. We need to help those people, giving them a platform, help them to raise their voice, their words. And we also need to reflect inward, asking ourselves, how do we treat others, what we teach our children, and how we treat people how do we treat people in public and also in our in our home as well. So if we could take a little time, reflect inward, pay attention what is happening around us, and hold each other respectfully, accountable. And whatever we see something is wrong, there is human suffering, we all should stand up, regardless of the victims or the perpetrator. If we could do that, I think we'll be able to make this world a better place for all of us.
It's so interesting because I'm mindful that in our entire conversation this morning, you haven't said take the time to sit with someone and understand their view, because then people get into wars. Wars of war of words is what I'm trying to say, around sort of I think this, I think that. Here's what this says. Here's what that says. You're talking about humanity, understanding, sitting with someone, listening. And tonight you'll be talking with people. What are you looking forward to the most tonight? You're part of actually the screening. You're going to be having kind of a Q&A if people go.
Well, the way this kind of event is organized is it's not just a screening, it's also having a two-way dialogue so that people can feel that they went to an event, saw a documentary, and also they had the chance to share their thoughts and ideas, how to overcome hate and violence and intolerance from our society. And I'm looking forward to meeting with people from all walks of lives. And in this documentary, we also have included a lot of Canadian stories, like the Indigenous story, the cultural genocide the Indigenous people went through for generation-wise. We depicted those stories very powerfully, and also a lot of perpetrators, the reformed white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and other extremists, their journey, what led them to embrace, and what also inspired them to live that kind of lifestyle and now work for humanity, peace, and understanding.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure speaking with you this morning. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
That is Rice Boan, the co-producer of Pain and Peace, who survived being shot in the face after 9/11. He's also the founder of the nonprofit called World Without Hate, and he has obviously been in studio with us. He's in Winnipeg for the film screening event that is happening tonight and the talkback session, which will happen afterwards. So I want to mention where this is going to be happening. So it is at 6:30 is when the event begins, 6:30 to 8:30. This is the Robert Schultz Theatre at St. John's College, so that's in the campus of the University of Manitoba. Registration is free, by the way. Seating is limited. There are still some spots. To reserve a spot, after the show, I'm going to put this up on my Facebook page, so you can click on the link. But basically, you have to check out Eventbrite, and you're looking for the Pain and Peace film screening, and you'll find tickets there.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
So it's time to tell you who has won the books. It's powwow time. We have the children's book. We talked to the author earlier this morning. We asked you for your favorite memories of powwows.
This is Daphne Young. One year when my son was really young, we attended the Manitoba powwow downtown at the MTS Center. During one of the dances, there was kind of a slower dance. My son was only about 4 or 5. We found ourselves standing, kind of dancing behind a man who was wearing the fancy dress. That's with the big bustle, with all the feathers. And in the middle of his bustle, he had a mirror holding, like as part of the bustle. You have to know what one looks like to know what I'm talking about. Anyways, he wasn't dancing very fast or hard in front of us. He was just kind of like bouncing a little bit and going slowly, kind of like he was resting. But my son saw the mirror in his bustle, saw his face reflecting in the mirror in the bustle. And my son stayed no less than 1 foot behind this man, dancing his heart out and watching his own little face. I'm glad that man wasn't dancing hard. He would have knocked my son flying. He was just going slow, but it was so cute.
I love the laughter in Daphne's voice as she's sharing that memory from a powwow about her son. So Daphne is one of the winners of the book. It's Powwow Time, which was just launched at McNally Robinson last night by Martha Troy, and local author. And the other winner will be Shirley, who also called our listener line with a memory. And we're just short on time to play all the calls. But a number of you called us. We randomly chose the winners. So it's Daphne and Shirley who will be winning the books. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll contact the winners after the program with information about how to collect your prize. It is coming up to news time at 8:30, and just a reminder for the Radio Noon call-in this afternoon between 12:30 and 1. We have local programming. We hope you'll join guest host Emily Brass, who is filling in for Janet Stewart. And then this afternoon, more local programming with Faith Flundell on Up to Speed, and that program's on between 3 and 6. Well, we certainly have had a quiet last Friday of summer morning in terms of the commute. Things have been good out there. Always reminding you this week about the 18th Street reconstruction that is happening in Brandon, because that's, of course, the main street that runs through the city. And that began earlier this week. There's going to be multiple phases that will affect your commute in Brandon. But here in Winnipeg, elsewhere around Manitoba, we haven't had any calls. So still time if you do see an issue. 788-3093. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's mostly cloudy and 14. The clouds are supposed to clear up this morning. We're looking at a high of 22. The search continues for a 6-year-old boy in Shamattawa First Nation who has been missing for more than a day. Johnson Redhead attended a breakfast program at the school in the northeastern Manitoba First Nation until 9 Wednesday morning, but he didn't show up in class. RCMP Sergeant Paul Maneg is in the community helping with the search.
6 years old, this is too young to be going missing. We do have temperatures working in our favor. It's still like 21 degrees up here right now. We have that working in our favor. It's just, we need to know where he is.
Maneg says about 50 to 100 volunteers from the community are helping in the search. He says today a drone and a police dog will help too. The Canadian Rangers are helping with the search. Lieutenant Colonel Vincent Couturier says he is the commanding officer of the 4th Canadian Ranger Patrol Group. He says 8 Rangers are based in Shamattawa and starting to help the group with the search on Wednesday.
The Canadian Ranger Patrol that is on site is from that community, so I can assume that they are concerned.
Couturier says given Shamattawa is mainly accessible by air, mobility will be a big challenge for searchers. Meanwhile, 4 members of Winnipeg's Volunteer Search and Rescue arrived in Shamattawa yesterday. Manitoba's new energy policy acknowledges that oil and gas won't be phased out as energy sources anytime soon. The province is slated to release a policy today that states fossil fuels will remain in use until cleaner sources of energy are more plentiful. Bruce Laurie is the president of the Ivy Foundation, which spends its money on advancing the green economy. He says the recognition that non-renewable fuels are sticking around for a while makes sense.
It's not like a huge revelation, but at the same time, I don't think it's a huge walk back. I think most people that are following the electricity sector, would probably say, well, that's a pretty reasonable response.
The Canute government has promised to make Manitoba carbon neutral by 2050. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says she's a gun owner and isn't afraid to use it. The Democratic Party presidential candidate made the remarks last night in Michigan. She spoke at a star-studded virtual campaign event hosted by Oprah Winfrey.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun. I did not know that. If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
Republican candidate Donald Trump spoke at an anti-Semitic event in Washington. There, he bemoaned the lack of support from Jewish voters. He said that if he didn't win November's election, in his opinion, the Jewish people would have a lot to do with it. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is also known as Orange Shirt Day, and it's fast approaching for Manitobans. September 30th was declared a statutory holiday for the province a year ago. The day is meant to reflect on the impacts of the residential school system. Michelle Cameron owns INAC, Indigenous Nations Apparel Company, in Polo Park. She's seen a rise in sales ahead of the day.
It's a day that we need to be recognized as a day of
acknowledgement and what has happened in Canada and the Canadian history. So for us to be given that holiday as a central holiday, it means a lot to us in the Indigenous community.
Cameron says she's often asked by other business owners how to recognize Orange Shirt Day. She says it's important to include a time for reflection for employees. An Indigenous artist in Winnipeg says she's had to deal with online sellers replicating her art without her consent. Jackie Travers says she's seen her designs on orange T-shirts, especially leading up to the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation at the end of the month. Travers says she recently noticed 2 Facebook-based sellers using her designs without her permission.
They don't credit me. They don't. What mainly happens is they're making profit off the trauma of Indian residential schools. They just know that it's a good time to sell T-shirts. So they're just basically profiting off, the death of children.
Travers says she's placed a watermark on her designs, but they remove it or put something on top of it. She believes most of the sellers are U.S.-based companies, and they never respond to her messages. CBC has reached out to the sellers in question, but did not receive a response as of last night. Well, celebrating 6 centenarians.
Happy birthday to you.
A big birthday party with family and friends at the West Park Manor in Winnipeg yesterday. 6 residents there are 100 or older this year, including Ethel Goodall, who's 101.
To be honest and good, live well, and I don't know, do the best you can and whatever you're trying.
Goodall says she's led a good life and done lots of traveling. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Lovely story to end the week with. Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
Megan Ketcherson in our news center this morning, as well as Aaron Broman. Thank you. In addition, thanks to our live team, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, and Kevin Ipatebo, our YouTube producer. Let's have a thank you also to our huge unit. Pardon me. I always say our huge unit because I'm looking at a list of names. The unit of people that work on the huge number of hours that they have to produce. So this is for the morning show, the afternoon show, the noon show, as well as the weekend show, web articles, so much work. This is our current affairs unit in CA at CBC Manitoba. Our associate producers, big thanks to Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Kalkadam Lugeda, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Jim Agapito, May McKillop, Bruce Layden, Marshall Hodgins, and Dylan Longhurst. Our community reporter in unit is Shanley Vidal. Hosts in unit this week are Nadia Kidwai, Faith Funel, and Emily Brass, as well as Janet Stewart. Producer in unit is Wendy Parker. Our YouTube producer, as mentioned, is Kevin Ipatebo, but I just like when he waves at you on YouTube, so I'm talking about Kev again. He always sticks his hand in. Hey, everybody, there's those hands. In addition, our leaders in the unit, Nellie Gonzalez, show's producer in CA, Current Affairs, and Leif Larson's the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Abby, take it away. How's the weekend?
Cold in the northern region and sunny in the southern region. Enjoy your weekend.
I left you 5 seconds. I'm sorry, man. All right, take care. Be well, everybody. We'll talk to you again on Monday with another edition of CBC's Information Radio. The Current is next.